Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Florida Sound Archive podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Kaiser. And for today's episode, we have a very special edition of the podcast because I've got here with me not one, not two, not three, but four members of one of the most beloved hardcore bands out of Miami in the late 90s and early 2000s. You may have heard of them. They go by the name of Destro. And here with us today, we've got Ariel Arro, Chip Walbert, Roy Ugarte, and Kenn Marshall. Destro is here. Welcome, guys. How are you?
Hi.
Good.
Hi, doing good. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure having you all on. Looking forward to this episode, as it's always fun when we can concentrate on something very specific, like a band. And that's what we're going to do here today. Now, you guys are no strangers. You're still friends to this day. So how have you been able to maintain your friendship after all these years?
The internet.
Yeah, that's probably the best way. Yeah, probably it.
We keep in touch. We text each other and stuff like that. I mean, comment on each other's pictures.
Yeah, we had a group. We have a group chat that we've had just for I don't even know, a long time now. Just that we just have titled Destro. We just talk pretty much almost on a daily basis, just back and forth. Nothing specific. Just hey, how's it going? We just
random shit
type stuff. Yeah.
I just
Watch your mouth, Ariel.
What?
Watch your mouth, Ariel.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you guys have been in touch with each other, thankfully, to, as you mentioned, the internet, right? Social media and also texting and that sort of thing has kept everyone in touch. But you all haven't played together in how many years now?
Oh, gosh.
No. Churchill
We did
Since
one.
the Churchill show?
Churchill show, which I think was 2014, maybe
yeah, that's something.
something around that.
around
there.
that time, yeah. Yeah, that was the last time we played with Julio. Yep.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Julio can't be with us here today. He might drop in, right? But right now he's not here with us here.
Hopefully.
So hopefully he can drop in. But for those that may not be familiar, or just to kind of go around and introduce everyone here, we're going to go around, just kind of give your name and also what you played. What was your role in Destro? So we'll start off with Chip.
I played guitar and rhythm guitar, and that was really what I did. I didn't do a whole lot of the writing in the band. I was there kind of when we did practicing. We kind of did. I was there kind of maybe for structuring songs, not so much writing the songs. I did a couple, but that wasn't really mainly my role. That was more Ariel and Julio.
Thank you, Chip. Ariel, we'll go over to you next.
I played rhythm guitar and lead guitar. And I don't think I wrote most of the songs. I think everybody kind of
we kind of wrote most of the songs.
Everyone chipped in a little bit. Get it?
Yeah. Okay.
There you go. So if there was a publishing check in the mail, it would go to everyone then, right? Let's go over to Kenn.
Yeah, I was the singer, I guess, lead lyricist. I guess I wrote the lyrics primarily, most on the full length, but some of the stuff was written on the EP beforehand. I wrote some of the stuff musically, wrote some of the breakdowns and stuff like that with Julio and Ariel. Just kind of, putting the heavy parts together because that was the stuff I liked about it.
You and Julio had that marching band background, so you had that good.
Yeah. I had just recently gotten into band, so kind of learning beginner music theory and stuff like that. So kind of putting together different time signatures and kind of learning about that stuff and kind of, putting that into breakdowns and kind of simplifying that to kind of make it sound cool and heavy and stuff, where the music was predominantly pretty fast. And that was not really my thing, but I enjoyed what I was doing. So that was kind of my role, I guess. And sitting on the computer when everybody else was playing.
That's true.
Let's go over to Roy.
I played bass provided the practice space and basically was the band dad.
Yeah. I would say that Roy really was kind of like he oversaw everything. He kind of was like the guy.
His house
and I don't think that
room was like headquarters for practice.
Yeah, I don't think that we would have been able to function nearly as long as we were able to if it wasn't for Roy.
Yeah,
and Roy's mother as well.
Well, I imagine if you were using his house as a practice space, someone in Roy's family had to be okay with that too, right?
Oh, totally.
No, she really
No,
wasn't.
they didn't have to be okay with it. They didn't have to.
She didn't have to.
No, she wasn't. And the occasional visit from his grandmother as well would come in and visit every now and then too. It's great.
Yeah, she'd pop her head in and be like, "Hi," and then she'd go back.
Yep, it's great. We'll get to that, I guess.
Now, I know Julio can't be here, but can someone just quickly share what Julio's role was with the band?
Julio was kind of the obviously he played drums, the ideas man. We would kind of get together because we were at school together, and we'd kind of just randomly come up with this either rudimentary like breakdown or just random riff and kind of think about it and then kind of remember it, a few days later when we'd be at practice, or I'd remind him, hey, remember this thing that we did, this thing? It's like, oh yeah, this, or we'd hear something that would spark him, or he would hear it and I would kind of fix it or change it and stuff like, or we bring it to Ariel and fix it and change it here and there. So it was really kind of a collaborative effort, but it all just kind of happened like organically. Something would just pop into our head and like, it would be cool to do this, or let's do this, or change this. And so we kind of wrote very collaboratively most of the time.
And Chip and I would switch between, like, if I wrote something, I'd bring it to practice. If he wrote something, he'd bring it to practice. And then it would either become 2 songs or 1 song.
Yeah.
Depending on what we were.
Would I be wrong in saying that Julio was kind of, I would say, the musician in the band in terms of like, he definitely had a much better understanding of.
He's the musician.
Yeah. Because we had towards the end of our life, we would do an intro, which was actually a classical piece of music that we just kind of transferred to what we did and made it more into a breakdown. And it was just, I think that was his idea.
Yeah, it was. His and Kenn's, because you were a part of that too.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Ken, was that you?
It was Julio who kind of introduced me to the piece. It was Gustav Holst's Planets, and it was something that we had been listening to. The Blue Devils, the Blue Devils drumline was a piece that they had been doing, and Julio really liked it. And we kind of always joked around like, it'd be cool to take that part and like put it in a song. And of course, I'm just like, how would that even work? And then eventually we got to a point where we would just kind of count the measures, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then kind of like, okay, we can make that into a breakdown. That works, and it's just kind of a thing that just happened, Yeah.
It was really good too.
Yeah.
It was one of those, that's one of the regrets. I think when we were supposed to do a last record, I think we were supposed to record it and we just never got around to doing it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then you had to teach it to me, who I'm an idiot. So it took like.
But kudos to Julio for thinking outside the box like that.
Yeah.
So thinking about the early beginnings of Destro, you've obviously known each other for a long time. So let's go back to the very early beginnings. How did you all meet? Did you all meet at the same time? Was it at different points? So we'd like to kind of start off with how you all started to connect back in that time period.
I met Chip and Roy in high school. That's pretty much how it kind of started.
Well, we were all going to South. Well, me, Chip, and Ariel were going to South Miami. I had someone introduce me to Chip because they're like, oh, you like punk rock? There's another guy who likes punk rock, and he wants to start a band too. And that was Chip. And then my cousin Yvette knew Ariel, and then she's like, oh, you should meet my friend Edie. And that's how I met Ariel.
Yeah.
So Ken and I have known each other probably, I think, since 5th grade.
5th grade, yeah.
We went to the same elementary and the same middle school, but then when we went to high school, I went to South Miami and he went to Coral Gables. I met Ariel on my first day in high school because when Ken and I finished middle school, our middle school, that was the last year that they had 9th grade. So we basically went to high school in 10th grade instead of going as freshmen. So Ariel's a year younger than me, so it was his freshman year. As my sophomore year, we had guitar class. It was our first class of the day. I met him on my first day of class, but at that time, I was just into metal. I wasn't into hardcore yet, and he was already listening to punk though, because I remember he was skating and he was listening to Minor Threat. He was listening to Youth Brigade, and I remember it was you and Gabby Corzo. I remember it was the two of you guys, and we had the guitars that they had in the class, and you guys were always playing that.
Yeah.
And so, and then basically I think I met Roy towards the end of 10th grade, I believe, and then we ended up sitting next to each other in American history, Roy, that we sat in 10th and 11th grade?
Yeah, and it was the same class. It was my math class. It was your American history class. It was in the same hall. And I would, every time I used the bathroom, I would walk past you guys and I would see you guys sitting behind each other or in front.
Right.
And
And then I think I came to school one day wearing a Youth of Today shirt and walked by him. And Ariel was like, "You like Youth of Today?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, we should do something." So
shaved head, Youth of Today shirt,
yeah,
baggy pants, Airwalk ones, and I was like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
I was wondering if there was a band shirt somewhere in that story because so many people on the podcast.
Yeah.
Remember that first connection with someone was a band on a T-shirt, and that's what that.
I connected the dots because I was like, he's wearing a Youth of Today shirt, and then I saw Roy after school, and he's wearing a Warzone shirt, and I'm like, who are these guys? Why don't I know them? You know?
And then we realized, we had guitar class together. So. And
then I was like, oh my God, you're the same guy. Because Chip had long hair, a little stash, and you wore a Metallica shirt every day.
I did. And you know how much I wish I had all those Metallica shirts still?
Oh, man.
So while this is going on, though, Ariel was in a band called Sasquatch. Mm-hmm. Which was at that time my favorite local band. They had a 5-song demo. It was the greatest thing. I have it keep it on my phone at all times. I still listen to it all the time.
And Roy and Ken, were you aware of Sasquatch as well, or were you also doing your own bands or projects at that time too?
At that time I wasn't. I had no idea what Sasquatch was. I wasn't listening to that sort of style of music at the time.
Like way later.
Yeah, I was more connected to Julio. We went to the same school. We had a mutual friend at the time, this kid named Sam Ness, who actually knew a person who knew both of us. We went to Gables, and Sam knew the metalheads of Gables, and I knew Sam, so I knew the metalheads, and there was this one kid, Diego, I forget his name at the time, but Diego was a metal
Big
kid.
Diego.
Big Diego was called. He always wore Iron Maiden or Slayer metal shirts, and he knew Julio because he was jamming with Julio and playing in what would eventually become a band called Third of May with Julio, and so that's how I met Julio. We then ended up becoming friends, and we were in band together, and then we kind of had similar interests in music. But at the time, I was not really into hardcore at the time. I mean, I was really big into like Nine Inch Nails at the time. It was kind of Nine Inch Nails and Soundgarden were the only things I was really listening to. But Julio introduced me to like Mean Season and those kind of things, and I was like, oh, that's cool. It's heavy. That stuff's okay. And then Diego introduced me to like local bands that were playing at the time, Bird of Eloman, things like that, Brethren, that kind of stuff. And I remember going to a show at then Cheers, and then running into Chip, who I hadn't seen in a long time. And if it was the Earth Crisis show, if I'm not mistaken, it was like Earth Crisis.
Might have been
Earth Crisis or Snapcase or something like that. And I remember
it was just one of those type moments.
I was just whoa, we like the same thing. And at that time, I think I had kind of moved into like listening to heavier stuff, more like Korn, Deftones-ish, but also kind of like the heavier Victory stuff that was going around. I believe it was the Earth Crisis show. And then from then on, the worlds just kind of melded a little bit, and we started going to more local shows. So I got introduced to Roy, and I met Ariel and things like that. And then, we just kind of, again, worlds just started to collide a little bit more than they had in the past. And that's kind of where I met all of those guys. But obviously, you know, I'd known Chip since, like you said, since fifth grade. We'd go to school together since way, way early on.
Also, I just want to mention that Kenn is actually, he's not our first singer.
Right.
We had a singer prior to him, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but I don't know if we had mentioned that or not prior.
You hadn't, but yes, absolutely. That really falls into those early origins of Destro and how you all really got started as a band. And Roy, as far as you go, were you aware of these bands that were happening at that time too, that had been mentioned? Were you doing anything musically at that point?
I wasn't doing anything musically, but I did go to Sasquatch practice because Javi, the drummer for Sasquatch, was a friend of mine from elementary school that we had known each other for years. So I had gone to the practice, and that's where I met Lorenzo, I think was his name, and Jose, who was playing guitar, who was also in Pink Eye. And I had they had kind of seen me at a couple shows or whatever. So I was like, okay, like these are people that I can get along with.
Yeah, that's important. So you mentioned Cheers as one of those places that touring bands would come, local bands would a lot of times open, or they'd play their own shows there. What other venues do you remember, or not even just venues themselves? A lot of times there would be shows in people's living rooms or backyards or wherever you can find space to do a show. So what other places do you remember back before the Destro days really began?
Well, before we answer that question, the name Destro was born at Cheers. It was at that Jimmy Rice benefit that morning again.
That's right. Last minute. That's right.
I was thinking about G.I. Joe, but I ran to the back and Roy and Chip were looking through a distro, and I just said Destro, and they were like, "Yes."
Was there ever an idea to have someone actually dress up as Destro?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it was Churchill's, of course. I mean, that was like the mainstay for many, many years. But we would go to Respectables on the beach, Roses.
Roses, The Edge, when it was called
The Edge, yeah.
And
there was the place in the Grove. What was the place in the Grove called?
The Kitchen.
The Kitchen.
The Kitchen, the Chili Pepper.
Chili Pepper.
And then
the Squeeze in Fort Lauderdale.
That girl from either Sunset
Bar.
have the parties all the time.
The one out in Kendall. I can't remember what her name was.
We played a lot of shows in Kendall, a lot of house parties in Kendall and warehouses that we played in Kendall too.
That's right.
Yeah, early Destro was a lot of. I remember because I was just tagging along at that point.
Yeah, you just came to hang out.
My friends who were doing stuff, and I just kind of went wherever they were going. And it was a lot of backyard things and house parties and things of that nature. I remember just kind of showing up with cars and punk kids and
and the weird thing is, I remember we did play a bunch of house parties. I don't remember the parties ever getting shut down.
No.
Like for just you generally think of like that would happen, but I don't remember that ever happening anytime we ever played.
Well, I mean, think about it. A bunch of Cubans partying until like 4 a.m. What would make it any different?
Fair enough.
It's fair.
You know?
Fair.
Now,
fair.
Pre Kenn and Julio. That was usually with Yuli and Manny. Yuli was the drummer. Manny was the singer.
Yeah, the first installation of Destro was Manny on vocals and Ulysses on drums, and then Yuli had put together a show for us to play across the street from his house because he lived in a cul-de-sac.
That's right.
How did you guys get connected with Yuli and Manny in the first place?
Edie, you knew Yuli because we met him through you.
I met him through somebody, and I can't remember who they were, but it doesn't really matter. But I met them through, I met Yuli through them. And then Manny, I met through Roy.
Yeah, he was someone that I knew just from going to shows.
Well, Manny actually, the funny thing is Manny actually went to school with Kenn and I.
Yeah, he went to our middle school.
He went to our middle school. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he went to South Miami Middle.
Yeah, he went to middle school with us.
Oh, weird. I didn't know that.
And I think I had met him through Daniel Zambron.
Oh, okay.
I feel like you met him through Monica, didn't you?
Might have been.
Because he was dating Monica.
He was dating Monica.
Might have been through Monica, but I don't know.
So Manny was dating this girl Monica who did a record label. What was the name of her label, Roy?
Well, Manny's label was what, Ash Records?
Evil Ash. Yeah, he did
Evil
a record
Ash.
label called Evil Ash, and then he switched over to Carpathia Records.
Yeah.
Later on, and we met him, I guess, just through what they said, just going to shows. And
I don't remember Manny ever like saying like, "Hey, I'll sing." Like, I don't know how that went down. I don't remember.
I was curious about that. Like, how did you decide as far as who would be the vocal?
Well,
Did he have any experience with singing for bands, or how did
No.
you? Okay.
No, because like before we even like got together and like played music, we were like hanging out like at Roy's house, and then soon enough we started jamming. Once we were able to like put together like drums, bass, guitar, and then we started jamming at Roy's house. But after that, I don't know how Manny was like, "Oh, I'll jump on vocals." They knew he was hanging out then, but I don't know.
The other place that we didn't mention of show where there were shows, at least when Destro had started, was the Brethren Warehouse.
Oh yeah, by the airport.
Yeah.
The Hialeah warehouse. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, originally we were practicing at Yuli's house.
Yeah. The first.
Right.
Yeah.
The first iteration, because Yuli had like a massive drum room where
Yeah, pretty much.
yeah, and we were playing with Yuli for like what, a year?
Yeah.
Called it quits, like it just like faded away, I guess.
Yeah.
Yuli, we recorded something. We recorded a very a demo on an 8-track.
Yeah.
We recorded at Capstone Music. That's where we recorded with Yuli.
Right. And man, I think we did 9 songs for that.
Yeah. Kenn was there, but he didn't sing.
No, he wasn't. He sang backups. He said it was basically just like it was a guitar store that had a recording studio in the back.
Yeah.
And we just did an overnight. Like it was pretty much come in at 9 o'clock or something, and then just work until 9 o'clock the next morning. And we did 9 songs, I think, that night.
Wow.
I think once I found Yuli, I told Roy and Chip like, "Hey, I found a drummer." So then we just booked it over there and started jamming there for about like a good year. Right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and then we did that demo at Capstone, and then after that, I remember because we were at his practice and we were experimenting with this song. It didn't even sound like what we were doing. Me and Roy always bring this up like in conversation, like how it sounded different and how cool it was sounding. And then after that, no more Destro for like until Kenn came along. But I don't know how long that was.
How would you describe that early sound of the band when you cut that demo?
Like post-hardcore-ish, like Fugazi-ish almost.
That you're talking about the song that the last song you're talking about?
The very last one that
because I don't remember that. I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure I was there, but I don't.
It wasn't
remember.
fast. It was almost like refused-ish kind of. If I have to like say a band, I guess I don't know because it wasn't fast,
Like on the demo, we had songs that were we definitely had not chosen a style necessarily we were going to go down. We knew we wanted it to be fast-ish for the most. We did like songs like if anyone has a demo, you can actually go back and listen to this. But we had like a song called Chewbacca the Spiritual Kickboxer, for like just like punk beats, and that's all it was. And me and Ariel were always playing around, like trying to expand what we could possibly do at that time. And then one day to the next, boom.
Right. Well, but before that though, there was a period where Manny had switched over from doing Evil Ash Records and doing Carpathia Records, which it was he was doing more punk influence stuff with that first label, and then he switched over and was doing a lot of like metal and screamo type stuff. So we ended up going back to Capstone and taking a couple of the songs that were on that 9-song demo, and he redid the vocals, and he did that more like it was more like I don't even know, like a Reversal of Man type thing where he's just like doing this scream. You couldn't understand anything he was saying when he was doing that, and he was doing this whole rolling around thing on the ground.
By then, Julio had already been in the band because Julio had started playing drums on that.
Julio was already there for that point. Okay.
Yeah. We had tried out one more drummer, but he wasn't hacking it. So yeah.
Right. So like Destro kind of calls it quits. We kind of like have not a falling out, but I think Yuli went back to doing the band that he was doing before, which was like him and I think his 2 friends when he was a little kid. So he got in trouble with his mom or something. I don't know, something dumb. We were in high school.
He was in a band called Grunk. And
that's right.
We were going to go on tour, and his mom wouldn't let him go on tour because he was still in high school at the time.
So we kind of just stayed out, and then We don't play.
You guys did another project.
Yeah.
You and Ariel.
Me
Middle Ground, right?
did something named Kevin from.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Okay, yeah.
No.
So this is like literally leading up to right before I got asked to join Glass Eater, but before it wasn't called back then it wasn't called Glass Eater because I got that phone call when I was doing that project with Roy and those other two guys because I was skating with those two guys. I just don't remember their names.
It was Kevin and I don't remember the second guy, the guy who sang, but we were that band also could not solidify a drummer.
No, that drummer sucked. He couldn't play for shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's not going to listen to this. We couldn't get through a single song without him forgetting what to do, and it was just like Chinese water torture, man. Like it sucked. So that, and then the guitar player Kevin pissed Roy off, and then Roy was like pretty much just canceled him, and we didn't hear from him ever again because he joined the Navy or some shit. I don't know.
Because Manny had a label, was there ever an idea that he would put out Destro's music?
I don't think we ever mentioned that.
No, I don't think that was ever like a topic for discussion. Like we just got a discount through him
on buying records
from his records.
That's right.
He also had a distro.
Yeah.
I'd be like, hey, let me get 5 of those Coalesce records and I'll pay you next week. So
no, you didn't.
So at that point, we were going to shows at the warehouse, and me, Ken, Chip, Julio, Ariel, like we're all basically hanging out all the time. We're just like a lot of times at Chip's house, whatever. We eventually Julio agrees to play drums on actually Glass Eater starts being like a thing again.
Well, no, that's when Glass Eater like pretty much started. I got that phone call. Once that project was over and done with, I get a phone call from Julio because I remember it was around the Warped Tour around that time, and Jason was trying to get me to join this band, and I'm like, I'm not going to join your band, dude. So, and then I got a phone call from Julio saying, hey, join my band. It sounds like Lagwagon. And I was like, what makes you think I like Lagwagon? But whatever. I ended up doing that, and then when he found out that I was doing Destro or that Destro was still happening, he wanted to double dip and play drums for Destro. So that's pretty much how it went down.
Yeah. And then we had our first, then that's when practices moved to my house.
Right.
So at that point, we do a couple shows with Manny, go back, record those 4 songs, 4 or 5 songs, whatever. And then we have a falling out with Manny.
And I remember that perfectly.
Yeah.
I don't remember the fallout at all.
So we got asked to play a Halloween show at the Vero Beach Women's Club. I don't remember who else played.
The second time you mean?
Yeah, this is a different time. Yeah, it's a different time. It was a Halloween show.
Okay.
And we had gotten there. We were there early, and Manny had gone to Orlando with Monica for whatever. I don't remember what he had gone for.
I remember.
He had gone to Orlando with that other girl he had started dating, him and Monica.
Oh, right. They'd broken up, right? Okay. And we were supposed to play at a certain time, and he was not there. He was like 3 hours late or something. And I told him, I said, I'm not going to do the band with him anymore. And we didn't end up playing, right?
We ended up not playing.
We did.
Okay. And that was it.
And I don't know how often you may have been traveling that far, but Vero from Miami is no short trip. So was that one of the first times in the band's infancy that you were traveling that far out of Miami?
No, we did that quite a bit because at the time.
What was the first show we left Miami for?
It was in Vero Beach.
It was Vero Beach.
Okay.
It was Vero Beach, and it was Bird of a Loman.
Mm-hmm.
Us, Shai Halud, Matt Fox, shout out to Matt Fox. He had gotten us the show.
Peterbilt, Carlisle.
Strong Carlisle.
I think Strong Arm, yeah.
Yeah, and
Strong Arm.
And they got us a show opening up. So we went, we did our thing. We were terrible. It was
Instead.
We covered Turning Point. It was the worst thing you've ever.
Instead.
No, it was Instead.
Instead, yeah. Sorry, we covered Instead. It was the worst you've ever seen in your life. But
I've seen some bad covers, man.
I'm just looking at Ken right now. He's just like.
we did all that, and then we would routinely go up there and play all the time because at that time, like the show Cheers had closed, the shows were happening at Club Q, but a lot of the touring bands weren't coming all the way down here. They were going to the Vero Beach Women's Center. So because of that, that was just a common trip for for everyone down in South Florida to either go play or to go attend shows.
Yeah. But the shows were good, so it was like you didn't mind going all the way up there.
Yeah. And like at that time, that scene was also, well, I don't know, the scene was buzzing, but like I know Discount was coming out of there. They had just moved from the old schoolhouse to the center. And that was kind of like that was the impetus of that. So that became a pretty regular spot for us to play in the grand scheme of things.
Besides Matt Fox from Shai Hulud, who else do you remember bringing you guys up north, whether it be to Vero or to Palm Beach or other parts outside of Miami?
Boy, I don't.
Alex Kinney.
Alex Kinney
would have definitely.
Yeah.
But that was like that.
Amy Fiddler.
Fiddler. But it was.
She was more Miami.
Yeah.
She got us a couple shows at Club Q too.
Yeah. But like at that point, it was Wiley who was booking all the shows at Club Q.
Yeah.
And like basically, he would book us, whenever possible.
Mm-hmm.
We whenever we were in town or whenever we were doing something here. So that like Matt Fox was the impetus for that because Matt Fox was the first person to give us a shot.
Yeah.
And then after that, actually he just talked to somebody and somebody took us up to the people who were booking in Vero. I don't remember exactly who they were.
I don't remember who it was either.
I know it was a young, I don't remember what her name is, honestly. It's been 30 years.
Wasn't there also I remember going with Destro at that time to Orlando. Was there a guy named Larry? Is that Larry?
That was in
Esteem, but
Esteem.
Oh, Larry from
Esteem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that was in
Estero, Florida, or something like that.
Yeah, and the kid from Fortitude would book us in Orlando from time to time.
And thinking about, though, a band like Esteem, we're talking about Southwest Florida now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Fort
how
Myers
often were you getting out to that part of the state during the early beginnings of Destro?
We went up there fairly often because we were real friendly with Esteem, and their whole scene in that area really kind of revolved around them. And we just became friendly with them, and those kids over there really liked us because we played fast. So we would go over there fairly often.
The early iteration, that was like that. I think we may have played there like once with Manny, but then after when Kenn joined, like that became a much more permanent like location that we went to.
Yeah. And this is really when Kenn came into the band and joined.
Yeah, and Kenn basically once Kenn started the band, when Kenn started singing for the band, that became which I can tell you the exact moment that happened. We were playing a show. We were supposed to play a show with Glass Heater and Promise.
Today is the day.
Yeah, and someone else, and they were like,
Really?
Yeah, we couldn't have a singer, so we're like, oh, we're just gonna go play our.
Oh, that was at the Brethren Warehouse.
The Brethren Warehouse. It was Today is the day, wasn't it?
And then no, it was
Might
not.
have been.
No, the show you're thinking of,
something like that, but
yeah. So we go to play the show, and Kenn and Little Eddie sing, like, just basically took turns yelling into a microphone absolute nonsense because they knew the songs. And then at that point we were like, okay, Chip's like, hey, Kenn's voice sounds pretty good. We should ask him to join the band. And Kenn's my friend, let's do this. And we had a conversation with Julio and with Ariel, and like they had no objection. We were all hanging out anyways.
I have a memory of Kenn screaming. Yeah, I remember that.
And it was always that. Kenn basically never moved from the same spot that he was from before joining the band till through like his whole iteration in the band, which is just sitting at my computer, either talking on the internet or writing lyrics. So before he was in the band, that's what he was doing. When he was in the band, he was talking on the internet.
Because the funny thing is, when we would practice, we could talk more about practice, but at practice, we never had a PA. So Kenn never actually got to sing at practice. Yeah. So it was kind of like he sat on the computer and doing whatever it was he was doing, if he was writing lyrics, whatever. But he never actually sang at practice.
He was listening. He would,
Yeah.
listen.
I always like the British say, I'll just do it on the day. I never, yeah, I'll just do it on the day. I never worried about, like, well, I need to make sure that this is right. Again, I had no experience in being a singer whatsoever. As much as I knew about it, again, it was like I was listening to Coalesce and Cave In and Converge and Earth Crisis, and I was like, well, I figured out, well, I guess I can scream like they do. Why not? So I had kind of been with Destro, like just hanging out and going to shows and stuff like that, and they were kind of getting pretty frustrated with Manny because it felt like they wanted to do something serious, but he didn't seem like it was just kind of fun for him or whatnot.
I think he also wanted to move to Orlando too.
Right. And he had some stuff going on. I feel like personally, he had some stuff going on, so it wasn't a big priority for him. And I just happened to kind of be around. And, just as a joke, I was like, no one knows what Manny says anyway, so I could just get up there and do the same thing and no one would be any the wiser. Right. And so the opportunity just came where it was like, well, we don't have a singer. Why don't you do it? And I was like, okay. Sure, I guess I couldn't tell you what I said. I just said stuff that seemed to rhythmically fit with what was going on. And then I just remember, just walking off like nonchalantly and people being like, that's amazing. I didn't know you could do that. And I was like, I don't know. I just sound like the other guys do. It was like no big deal. You know what I mean? But it was never like my intention to like be in a band or anything like that. I was like, oh, these are my friends and they do a thing and I guess I'll do a thing with my friends. And that's just kind of how it started out.
How would you describe that transition? Did everyone feel like this was the right fit for the band and the direction you all wanted to go in?
Yeah. It just sounded like a whole new band with Julio.
Yeah, it did really become like a different band. Just as someone who was just watching Destro's progression from the outside and then being an insider, it was just like, my friends having this kind of like fun, sort of jokey, kind of punk-ish band that they were doing. And then, me feeling like, well, now I'm a part of it. Like I wanted to do something that was fun, but something that people would, take seriously. I didn't want to be in like a fun sort of like joke band. It was one of the things I told Julio. I was like, I'm happy to do the band with you because Julio and I were friends, but I was like, but I kind of wanted to be serious. I don't want to, there's stuff about like, Legend of Zelda and Chewbacca, the spiritual. I didn't know anything about that stuff. I was like, I want to do serious stuff like Earth Crisis and Coalesce, and I want to do serious, I want to do like serious stuff and want people to like the band for, it to be serious and stuff. But like it just seemed like things changed. Like we kind of made a concentrated effort to do a legitimate band and kind of start over really, so that Destro was a band that like was like, oh, these guys that do a thing, but just like, oh, okay, well, I enjoy kind of the music that these guys are making.
How quickly into this did you all start to write new music?
Well, I mean, as soon as it went into fruition, I mean, I think that the writing happened like.
That was a deep thought. Pause.
Okay, well, I will say we were writing.
All right.
And I think that.
Welcome back, Ariel.
Welcome back.
I can clean that part up.
No, you can't. Leave that alone. Leave that there.
Extended cut.
Yeah.
Having Kenn and Julio in the band, I think it really. I felt like as a band we were angrier. Julio, I mean, no offense to Yuli. I mean, Yuli's a nice guy. And he's a good drummer. Julio is an incredibly gifted drummer, and I felt like that between having both of those guys join the band, Kenn and Julio, it really kind of elevated us and said, okay, we need to play better, we need to write better. And I just felt like musically
better, and it pushed us to be better musicians.
Yeah, musically, I just felt like it was significantly angrier than what we were doing prior to that.
And at that point, we had also started Miami-Dade. We were already at Miami-Dade Community College. So we all had two options, which was talk shit in the cafeteria, or talk about the band in the cafeteria, or go to class. Surprisingly enough, we chose talk shit in the cafeteria about the band. So at that point, we were much more motivated to like do the band. We were like, all right, so we want to go and we want to tour. We want to go and we want to do this. We want to go and like, we want
Put a record out.
Yeah, we want to put out a record. We want to do this. We want to blah, blah, blah. And we had started seeing, I wouldn't say like our peers, but like just that, like there's movement in like the scene down here, like, and like Newfound Glory had just gotten signed to a major. We weren't saying that we were going to be like them or anything, but like Matt Fox had talked to us a lot about how Shy Lude was doing and Morning Again was doing and all that. And we're like, hey, if they can do it, why can't we? Well, we couldn't be on their level, but we definitely were like making an effort to at least go out. And Matt Fox was always like, you got to tour, you got to tour, you got to tour. He was very much, Yoda to us. Like, you got to, or you got to go do things.
We were very fortunate that we had those guys that were able to kind of help us. I mean, our first tour we went on, we just kind of did our own thing. We just did a couple of shows, but our second tour, Poison the Well took us out, and it was after Opposite of December had come out, so they were already a big deal. So we were real fortunate to be able to go and do that and be able to play these great shows, and we met a lot of people through that.
Were these shows prior to the CD release of the self-title, or was this after that?
Prior
to that. So what
first
songs were you touring off of at that point? Was it stuff off the demo? Was it stuff that you were writing since Kenn joined the band? Like, what songs were you playing at that time?
At that time, we had the stuff that was on the demo, like the 4 or 5 song demo that we had recorded with Manny. But Kenn had changed all the lyrics. We didn't really have much to sell. We just had T-shirts. So we were just basically like, oh, we want to go see how it is. And the way that actually came about is like, we want to go on tour. We want to go, we want to go get out of the state. So we had played a show with Code 7 with Kenn on vocals. At that point, Matt Fox had already committed to doing an EP, like a couple to like release our record. So we decided that we're just gonna go and we're gonna see how this goes. We're just gonna go out and book 3 shows. We played North Carolina. We played, Big Dave booked us at his club at Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I don't know the name of the club, but we played
Virginia.
We may have played Virginia, and we played. I think Virginia. We played with Swank,
which was Big Dave's band.
Yeah, which is Big Dave's other band, which was actually a huge show at some pizzeria. And
that's right. Okay, that's right. Yeah, I remember that.
And those 3 shows, like 2 of them, one of them was terrible. The other 2 were pretty decent. Like the Swank show actually was really good, but we were just like, oh, and that connection became a connection with Code 7, who then at that, basically became like really good friends with us. But Big Dave specifically was a huge friend of ours for a good amount of time, and he would always help out a lot. That was the first tour, but when we got back, it was definitely, we definitely set money on fire is a good way of putting that. So it wasn't very profitable. Maybe just selling T-shirts wasn't the best idea. Maybe having like, oh, here's some shirts that you can wear, guys.
I've never seen the early Destro shirt. What did it look like? What was the design?
It was
which was
X's?
It said Destro on the front, and on the back it had the skulls, I think is what it was.
Right. We had
there was that.
Ian Rowan, who was at one point co-owner of Eulogy. He was a good friend of ours, and he hung out with us a lot. And he was always doing this. He was always drawing, and he drew these. He had like a specific style of skull that he would draw, kind of like if you see like a pus head skull, you know that it's a pus head skull. Well, his is the same thing. It's like he had like these skulls that he drew, and you knew it was an Ian Rowan thing. So he drew some stuff for us and put that together. And we had a like a joke crew that we had at that time called the 305 Death Wish, which was because we every weekend we'd watch Death Wish 3 with Charles Bronson. And Roy's going to lose his mind because we're talking about this without him right here. But we had like Death Wish crew shirts is what the shirts that we were selling.
Was the To a Friend shirt made at that time?
That was when the EP,
shirt?
We did that one right after, I think, because we were selling both of those, but the EP, I don't think the EP was out yet.
Okay. I don't remember the times.
Roy might have a better recollection. but we had both. Those were the
Yeah.
two shirts that we did first, and then the other one, which that Kenn was talking about, it was we had a song that to a friend, which is the last song on our EP, which was actually about the Legend of Zelda, very subtly, I would say, but it's about the Legend of Zelda, and it had Link on the shirt.
Remember that now.
Yeah.
Now, there were elements.
I have one somewhere to see if I can find it.
There were elements too of straight edge in the band's approach. So was everyone in the band following that same approach too, or was it only certain members? What do you remember of that?
We were all straight edge, but we
Yeah.
were a straight edge band. You know,
We were a straight edge band. Yes, we were. What are you talking about? Yes,
We were definitely a straight edge band.
I don't know what you were doing at that
Yeah,
time.
no, Julio and I.
but you know what I mean.
We
you know what I mean. You know.
we were at high school. We were the straight edge kids at our high school, right? We were the ones who wore X's on our hands or on our book bags and things like that. So we're definitely very straight edge. I had no idea what it was, until I was kind of introduced to it. Again, I never really, drank or smoked or any of that stuff. Never really interested me. It wasn't until like I had met Chip at a show, and Chip told me about straight edge, and I remember being like, "Oh, I mean, like that's what I am, I guess."
Yeah.
I didn't have a label on. I was like, "Oh, I don't do any of those things," so it was fine. And then Julio kind of introduced me to more, of the music side of listening to like 108 and stuff like that, Mean Season, a bunch of the straight edge bands that he was into. So it was him who was like told me about putting X's on your hands and stuff like that, and I was like, well, that's fine. Like I don't care, like I'll do it. Like it's not a big deal. So I always kind of like we embraced it because it was was kind of indicative of what was going on at the time. And, I always saw it as something that was inherently positive. You know what I mean? There was nothing really bad about it. I guess, there was some negative connotations later on. Different people did X, Y, and or Z. But, I had no idea. I had no issue with like embracing it as like a band. You know what I mean? We didn't alienate anyone who wasn't,
No.
Or anything like that. It was just a thing like, oh, this is a cool thing that I am. And like it is what it is.
But also at the same time, it may not have been as obvious as some people, because if you look at a contemporary like Esteem, they'd have X's around the name. They had lyrics that had straight edge. They were talking about the themes and what have you. I don't know of many Destro songs that were doing that, or maybe there were. Did you all incorporate any of that approach into the music, into the lyrics, or was that something
I think we had
that...
one song.
Yes, there's one song, Red Badge of Courage, that I wrote with that sort of theme in mind. But again, I never wanted to be too sort of like preachy about it, because I always felt that like everyone's experience with straight edge or with, whatever their, cultural identity was at that time was always like very personal. For me, kind of growing up where I grew up, that kind of stuff, drinking, drugs, that kind of thing was all over my entire neighborhood, right? So it was very personal for me to remain against that, to kind of be where I wanted to be. It wasn't like that for everyone else. So when I wrote lyrics, it was just kind of about my experience. And if, some people were able to kind of share in that experience, that was great. But I didn't want to alienate anyone who was like, well, I think this is silly, or this is not something I follow, right? So while it was always a theme, I thought it was always best to kind of veil the theme. So if straight edge wasn't your thing, or you had some other personal mantra, like that was fine. It didn't have to be straight edge. Whatever you kind of latched on to kind of get you where you wanted to be, or remain focused, or, abstain from this, that, or the other was fine. The preachy stuff I like to leave for Earth Crisis. Like that was fine. Like I was happy having them have that lane, and me just kind of like doing my own little thing and representing it in my own way. But, we didn't shy away from it, like putting it on shirts and stuff like that, because there were some people who enjoyed that, and there was no reason for us to not enjoy that. It's not like we weren't, straight edge. I just, didn't want to, again, with regard to writing lyrics, I didn't want to be like, well, I am this thing and you must be, it's, your experience is your experience.
Right. And just on that idea of lyrics, you mentioned to a friend was about Zelda, and what other themes went into the lyrics and talk about the overall involvement of other members too when it came to putting those lyrics down on paper.
Oof. Uh, well, with the EP, most of those lyrics were already written. I think I kept most of the stuff from like 102 to a friend, maybe.
Not
Uh, uh,
you wrote,
Meathead,
you
Musclehead.
wrote
Sorry, I just called it
you
Meathead.
wrote the Zelda lyrics about
I did,
uh
I did. But I mean, the theme was still there. So a lot of the stuff that was on the EP, I didn't really change. Like Musclehead in particular, I changed a little bit, but the theme of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
of,
yeah.
of Musclehead was still there. 102, again, the EP for me particularly was just kind of testing out my lyrical ability. There's a song in there I wrote about the Wonder Years. I was really big into watching the
Oh
Wonder
yeah.
Years at the time, so there was stuff like that. It was just something that was really fun. Just because I had already felt like the identity of the band was whatever it was going to be. And so I was going to use the full length to kind of delve into more, I guess, more personal, more angsty stuff. So while the EP was already out there, I would make some changes to a couple of things here and there. But once the LP came out, it's like that was where I really wanted to be like, well, these are the songs that were written when I was in the band. So this is like my opportunity to kind of put some of my personal experience into the actual lyrics. And so um, on the accuracy, there was stuff about just kind of things that I was going through, sort of personal stuff, breakup stuff, being angsty, being angry, But then also there were things about being friends and kind of the relationships that I had made, with people in the band or just people that I had met kind of along the way. So it was always the lyrics for me were always very personal. I was listening to a lot of Nine Inch Nails and Deftones and Coalesce and stuff like that. So I was always like really interested in how those guys, particularly like when things like Coalesce, where they would take these sort of like wild themes and put them into lyrics that didn't seem like they made any sense, but on third listen, you were like, I completely understand what this means. And so I tried to do some of that. And that's kind of where that came from.
Sure. Did you find that there was a song or two that the people coming to the shows really connected to? They would want to sing along more with you. Is there a song or two that springs to mind?
Yeah, anything with a breakdown. Yeah.
No, 102 to a friend, I would say were probably the biggest two
Yeah.
because they had the big sing along parts.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one thing I didn't really write were sing along parts because I didn't understand I guess hardcore song structure, right? Like I remember being told, well, you gotta put a gang vocals part, and I was like, what is that? I don't understand what that is. What are you talking about? Well, there's got to be a part where everybody can like sing this thing. Okay, I guess that's not how it was in my head, but I remember I think maybe Matt Fox was in the studio with us. We were recording with Jeremy Staska, and was like, oh, well, this is a part where we can all sing this one word. And I was like, okay, sure, if that works, whatever you guys want to do is fine, I guess, but it wasn't like I actively thought, well, I want people to scream this particular part. That never crossed my mind. It was kind of like, where do you think people could do this thing? Well, I guess they could do it here. Okay, let's do it there. And shout out to Jeremy Staska, by the way. Like,
Yeah, man.
That was
and then
awesome.
he was,
Definitely
Jeff,
wanna talk-
was that you that interviewed him recently within the last couple of months?
Yes, Jeremy did come on the
Listen to that, okay.
podcast. He really took a deep dive into his whole musical journey. Thinking about, though, your recording, right? You mentioned Jeremy Staska, who truly recorded just about everybody down in
Yeah.
South Florida and other bands throughout Florida that he recorded as well. So how did you guys get linked up with Jeremy in the first place?
Through Matt Fox, I think, right?
it was through
Yeah.
Matt
Yeah.
was, oh, I'll pay for your guys' recording. You guys can go to Studio 13. So we had to call Jeremy, introduce ourselves, and then be like, hey, when do you have time? And he was like, oh, from this, it was like 3 days, it was like a weekend. And he's like, and we're like, okay. For the EP, it was like, we have 3 days to record 7 songs. We can do that.
Sure.
We basically worked all day and all night and then came back for like a Friday, Saturday, came back the following week to do one day to mix and do everything and vocals and mixing. And that was that was the first recording. The second one, I think we did in a week. So a little bit more time.
Now, Jeremy is not straight edge, for those that didn't know that.
No.
The furthest from it.
Yeah, cool dude.
So, how did you guys connect when you were in the recording studio? I know Jeremy would smoke quite a bit, and how did you all enjoy that experience?
Well,
He was-
He was cool about it.
we worked around his bong rips is how
Yeah,
it how
that's
is how it
But-
worked.
But he was very respectful, though. You know what I mean? He wasn't just going to light it up and blow it in the control room. You know, for the most part, if he was going to, he would generally give us a heads up. We kind of walk out.
Yeah, he also was nice enough to always offer.
Yeah.
When Jeremy was on, he mentioned about the straight edge bong hit. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Sweet.
He didn't mention the bands that were there, but he just mentioned that was something that
I think that was every band any band that
Yeah.
went in there. It was the
I know.
just blow it in my face.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
I know a few straight edge people that got smoke blown in their face, but I'm not going to mention their name.
Not me.
But we did, dude, I remember we brought South Park and he had never seen it before because I was videotaping all the episodes to VHS and we brought like a little TV and we started watching South Park episodes and he was tripping. You know?
That and then we brought the video game system.
Video games, yeah.
Yeah. We had a great time recording with Jeremy. Jeremy was always great to hang out with.
And
He's a funny guy.
Jeremy being a drummer, I always appreciated the way he mic'd the drums for many of the bands that he recorded.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
some of the most memorable instrumentation on any of the Destro records, especially the EP, I feel like was the drums. And it just sounded like a missile attack happening.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop, really. It really was from the first track to the very end. What do you remember about the drums during the recording? I know Julio's not here to really speak on it, but what do you all remember from that?
Just being on
I remember-
that riser.
Yeah, and it took like 6 hours
To get the
for
sounds.
Julio and Jeremy to like get the sound right, and none of us could understand what was happening really. And I was like, well, why is it taking so long? The drums are the drums, and Julio was very specific about the size of the china and where it needed to be and all of this other stuff. So I just remember it taking a really, really long time, but eventually he was happy with it. I know Julio wanted to do a lot of the mixing with Jeremy and him being in there. And I just remember Jeremy's face when Julio would be like, well, can you turn the drums up? And Jeremy just giving him a look like, no, we can't keep doing this. But Julio was very specific about the sound that he wanted with the drums. And I just remember it taking a really, really long time. But him, being ultimately pretty happy with it after it was done, after it was all said and done.
Were there other bands from South Florida that you were familiar with at that time that you knew had recorded with Jeremy and you were happy with the finished product because you enjoyed
Shy
those
Elude.
records?
Shy Elude, Poison the Well.
Shy Elude, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Morning Again, Culture,
Yeah.
everybody, Tension, everybody recorded with them. Strong Arm, did they do their last? Well, I think they did both their full lengths there and they both sounded great.
Yeah.
They did.
I mean, he was pretty much the guy, especially because you go back and read in interviews, like old interviews where they say, oh, we went to do our demo and the engineer had no idea what we were trying to do. Like they'd never heard this kind of music before. Jeremy really, even if it was, outside of what he normally would do, he kind of understood at least, he may not get that what we were doing with this fast style of music of hardcore, but he knew what the idea was. He knew what we were kind of going for.
Yeah.
Right. And you can hear that, I think, in all of his recordings that he's done. And I appreciate hearing the drum story because that makes complete sense. So you're putting these songs down, right? You're recording them. And you also have the idea of the actual CD itself, the physical output, which was on Matt Fox's label, Ides of March. How did you guys know that that's where you wanted to release it, and talk about that relationship with Matt?
You be nice.
I love Matt Fox, but I think even Matt Fox would admit that the infancy of Ides of March was probably not as he would have scripted it. I think, we can debate whether or not, there were some things that would have been done differently. I know Roy and I were, again, and just like anybody in any other band, we were big advocates for doing as much as we could for Destro, right? It was our baby, our project. We loved it. And we'd have to lobby pretty hard to get certain things done through Matt. It didn't always work out that way, but we did the best that we could, right? And we knew that we wanted to work with Matt. Matt's a great guy. He's a good friend of ours. We all love Shai Hulud. We're always super excited to be on the label with Matt Fox of Shai Hulud, right? But I don't think, me personally, I don't think that Destro got the sort of push for whatever reason that it should have. And again, not to slight Matt Fox. I'm happy I'm happy for the support that he did show us, but it will always be my opinion that, there could have been more done that could have kind of pushed Destro a little bit farther, in my opinion. I love him, and I hope he doesn't. I hope he doesn't get mad at me. But I think he will get mad at me because I think Matt Fox thinks that I've always disliked him for some odd reason. He always thinks I make fun of him or I dislike him because he loved Dune, and I was like, Dune is weird. What are you talking about? But but I love him. I just I think we had when it came down to it, we had a kind of a difference of opinion, not in a bad way, but I just thought hey.
As far as pushing the band, so to speak, I want to just get a little bit more into that idea. So as far as the label goes, what were some things you were hoping were going to happen? Was it more getting the band on tours? Was it getting the band to be reviewed by different zines and that sort of thing? Like, what was the idea? What were you hoping for?
Yeah, I again, and maybe this is naive, but I thought it made sense that with, the label head being in one of the bigger bands in the hardcore scene at the time, it just made sense to take your label bands on tour with you, right? It just seemed like it would make sense, right? If you're Trent Reznor, you're running Nothing Records, who's your opening act? It's Marilyn Manson, right? Like, right? It just makes the most sense. So I think that's what I thought would happen, right? It just seemed like it would make sense. We'd go because we had at that point in time, we had been playing with, our friends' bands that just happened to be some of the, better or bigger, bands in the hardcore scene, like Poison the Well and things like that, right? Again, when Opposite, like Chip said, Opposite of December came out, it was huge, it was massive, right? So to be able to play shows with those guys was huge for us. So it just seemed to follow that if we wanted to continue the trajectory and the momentum that we had, like, why wouldn't we be on shows with Shai Hulud, right? It just made sense.
We wanted to move on to bigger and better things, I think, because we were playing a lot of the same, like, I call them, whatchamacallit. There were like a lot of the same shows that were happening that we were playing, like it was either Destro, Glass Eater, so-and-so and so-and-so.
Sure.
So it was happening a lot. So for me, it was like, well, let's get out of here.
Sure.
Let's go somewhere. Let's, like, not because Glass Eater was doing it, but I feel like because being in both bands, one was, was upping the ante, not because of who we were, but just because of like the push that we were getting. And then the other one was like just right behind. And I think, busting out of the just not playing any more local shows and like actually getting out there and playing I think it benefited everybody. But, I, like Ken said, I think that the push, I think Destro should have been pushed a little bit, more, as far as I'm concerned.
The EP was solid. I mean, it was a very fast-paced, hardcore record. And from the moment it begins, the tone is set. And I want to talk about whoever's idea it was to put in the clip of the New Age Outlaws and DX and that late 90s wrestling when it was really at its most popular, I feel like. So whose idea was it to kick off the album with that clip?
That was y'all.
I'm 100% sure it was.
Yeah, that we were very big into WWE at the time, right? Everybody was. The Generation X was
Yeah,
super
the
cool,
Attitude Era
crotch
was like,
chops and all that, right?
yeah,
And it was just like just coincidence, that it happened. And I was like, oh, we got to clip that. I was like, that has to be the opener. Like we need to use that like whenever we can.
yeah,
And again, I didn't know anything about, licensing and copyrights or whatever. I didn't think that would ever be a thing where, Vince McMahon would be like, stop using my stuff. But I was like, this is just too cool not to use, right? Because we're in that period where bands were sampling stuff
Yeah.
all the time, right? Everyone opened with something or had a cool clip at this point or something like that, right? So I was like, well, why not us? And it just seemed to fit. And we were big wrestling fans, so it
yeah.
was just like, well, we've got to use this wrestling thing. Like, why not? It just seemed pretty poignant to use.
Right. And the first track, Juliet, it just flowed so beautifully into that track. Talk about that song for a minute, because I really feel in conjunction with the sound clip, that song really does set the tone for the rest of the album or the EP.
Good song,
Yeah.
such a good song.
I think that was a song that we had written pretty early on, I think.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like really basic. It was like it's like here's what it is. First chorus.
Real straightforward.
Who wrote that song? Was it you?
I think it was me. Might have been Chip. Might have been me.
Might have been me. I don't remember.
No, I think you did. Yeah, you came up with the bass part, and then I think I came up with the middle part, the part that Jason screams over.
We were like, so we just literally were like, all right. So we wrote the song. When Annie, just a quick thing. I think we changed the name of the song when Kenn came in. Kenn wrote new lyrics, and we were just like, all right, we just wanted to write, because we always wrote in ways that it was like, all right, so we have a Mosh song, we have this really fast song, so let's write something really fast. Like even like towards the stuff that never got released, we had like a song that was like 1 minute and 28 seconds long, and then we had a song that was like 8.5 minutes long for some reason that is beyond me. That like, so it was just like, that's just the way we wrote. We wrote like, all right, we need a song that's gonna like, get the ball rolling, and then something that's gonna be a little bit more experimental for the most part.
Whose idea was it for the title of the EP, Lost, Lonely, Broken, and That's Just the Beginning?
That had to be Kenn. I think
That was
Kenn.
me. That was pretty much me. I'm a big fan of ellipses, just because I'm just a nerd for stuff like that, and I wanted something that was cool and angsty and dark, and that's what I settled on. I was like, I wanted to be poetic, within this sort of like punk rock hardcore format, and that was kind of me being poetic and it was also kind of a nod to the fact that I was hoping that more would come from it, and just kind of continuing the story of this journey of this thing that we were sort of doing. So the beginning was the EP, and then we forge a path later on down with the full length, and we'd
Right.
see where it would go. So
Now, I know my experience seeing you guys play, the pits would get very wild and crazy when you all would play songs off that EP. From your vantage point, what was it like when you started playing these songs? How did the people receive them? What were those pits like from what you were seeing out in the crowd?
Well, we stopped playing on the floor.
yeah. Yeah, that was graduation. It's like, well, we can't do this anymore because one of us is gonna get hurt.
Playing that first, was it the second or first Hellfest that Destro played?
It was 2000.
It was 2000.
Yeah, it was 2000.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was a pretty awesome sight of just seeing people annihilating themselves to our music.
Yeah, that was always really cool, right? Because it always sort of validated what you did. Yeah, it always validated what you did. It made you seem like you'd done a good job, right? Because at that time in the scene, right, it was like who had the sickest breakdown, like whose kids were killing each other over the breakdowns, right? And I always wanted to be a part of that. I know, and Julio and I, when we would talk about what we were playing, like we were playing fast stuff, so there really wasn't an entryway for us to do something that was super heavy, right? So when we had those 45 seconds, we had to make those 45 seconds count, right? We had to make someone want to hurt somebody else in those 45 seconds. So we always, particularly him and I, like we wanted to make the best breakdowns we could make within this like fast, hardcore kind of thing. So when, when kids were moshing, it was always, at least for me, it was always super cool.
Did you find there were differences in the styles of moshing, considering you were from the Miami area as you were touring? What were some of those differences you were noticing?
I would say, I mean, Miami, South Florida in general, really always had a kickboxing style. But then when we went up north, we went up to like New Jersey, and we saw kids two-stepping, and we saw kids, our friend Joey Southside from the Banner, he's throwing the battle axe, and we're just like, oh, that's different. We hadn't seen that. But everybody kind of had their own style, especially like what Ariel was saying about Hellfest. You would see kids from all over, not just the country, from people would come from all over the world, and you would see their dancing in different styles that they were doing depending on where they were from.
There was cool style and there was whack style, and I saw a lot of both. There was head walking. I missed that shit. What else? No, yeah, there was the whole kickboxing thing was like, yeah, like we thought that was like everywhere, but we just started learning like leaving Miami and playing it, everywhere else. Everybody had like a different thing, like a different, like a skateboard trick, but dance style.
Right. So, yeah. Did you guys ever get hurt while you were on stage or on the floor because of the crowd?
I did.
Kenn? Oh, that's right.
I think we all fucking we all had accidents, man.
Yeah.
Tell the Fantasy Fest story.
Wow! I'll let you guys tell it.
I mean, this is later on, in the Destro, career. But I booked a fest in a warehouse in South Dade. It's called Fantasy Fest, and it was just me and my friends, bands, coming to do a thing or whatnot. And we were, I think we were playing before Poison the Well, so we were going to close the show or something like that. And we're doing like our last song or whatever. A bunch of kids there, having a good time or whatever. The stage was like 13 feet in the air or something really stupid like that. So high in the air, so we're playing and we're doing our thing, and Ariel gets animated, and suddenly Ariel decides he's gonna.
Let me pause you 1 second. So Ariel and I had both gotten wireless setups for our guitars.
Yeah,
that's what. Yeah, so we both had said, the last song, we're gonna jump into the crowd with our guitars.
See, this part I didn't know. All I know was I'm there. We're doing the song, and I see Ariel fly off like from my right hand side. I'm just like, oh, Ariel's gone. But then I just see like the crowd just sort of like opens up, and where Ariel should have landed on top of people, he just landed in the center where there was no one. And so I hear his part, and he's playing, and then it just goes. What happened? And then Ariel's not there, and I just kind of see him on the floor, and I hear him, and he gets up. He's got this massive knot on his head, and I was like, "What happened?" And they didn't catch me. So I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah,
I can add on a little bit to that too. Oh, you can go ahead, Roy. Go ahead, Roy.
I did not see him jump. I only heard the tail end of that. So all I hear is. Because two like wow, and I'm like, what just happened? But it was also great going like a week later to Ian's house, and Kenn staying at Ian's house, and Brendan had been recording it, and Brendan from Circa Survive is recording it, and he's like, hey, do you want to see Ariel? You want to see a video of Ariel getting falling to his death? Yeah. Play, and you can hear. Then you just hear the brown.
So what happened was Ariel jumps, and his foot catches somebody in the front row, and because of that, he ends up just kind of going like this and just goes headfirst into the ground. And I don't remember if Roy was down there with me, but I remember picking Ariel up and being like, "Are you okay?" And like Kenn said, he's got like a softball like right here, and he says, keep playing, and I was just like, what are you talking about? And my parents had come to see the show. My father was an ER doc. My parents had just come to the show to see us. left before the last song, and this is before cell phones, so we couldn't call them. And I'm just like, oh my God, where's my father? I need him to look at Ariel to make sure he's okay.
I think we took,
Ariel has a small child growing out of the side of his head at this point.
Did you need medical attention, Ariel?
So,
We
so,
took it-
so most of y'all's versions are correct, but from what I remember is
You don't
Yeah,
remember anything.
we had wirelesses. Me and Chip decided we're gonna fucking do this. We're gonna jump off. I let him go first because I see him. He's stage right. I see him go, and then it's my turn. I jump, but I don't get my foot caught on anything. I jump, but I turn 180 so that people can catch me.
Oh, is that what happened? Oh, okay.
Could catch me on my back. What I didn't know, I didn't, my calculations were off. So, when I did that turn, I literally felt nothing catch me from behind. I just went straight down. And what hit me on the way down, from what Kenn's talking about, is my guitar neck. It smacked me on the way down when I hit my head on the floor. So not only did I hurt my right here, the collarbone.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I hurt it was like a slight fracture on my collarbone. That's what hit first. Then my head, slight concussion, and then the guitar smacking me on the way down. And that's what you guys heard, the brown, part. And then that skinhead dude lifted me up and smacked me around, and they came to. And I said, what happened? He's like, dude, you fell.
Did you finish the show?
No, that was the last song.
Yeah, it was the last song.
Like the dude Wally was like, dude, don't sue me. And I'm like, I'm not gonna sue you. He just gets me a bag of ice, and I'm just sitting on a truck with a bag of ice. And
Did you go to the hospital? I can't remember.
Yeah, we took him.
He did go to the hospital. Yeah.
Okay.
see, that's the thing. I don't remember.
Every time one of us got hurt, we ended up at South Miami Hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Chip's dad seeing me and asking me or telling. I don't know if it was my family or somebody. They're like, just check on him like every 2 hours. Just to make okay. Because that concussion was a hard smack, on my head.
Yeah, lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Was it common for your family to make it out to shows like that where they could witness something like that happen?
I think only Chip's parents came out.
Yeah, my folks would come out every now and then.
No, my mom came out to our last show.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. My I think my father was kind of like one of those situations where he didn't get to do this kind of thing when he was younger, so he kind of lived vicariously through us. So he was always very supportive of us, though.
Yeah.
Like if we needed to borrow some money to go record, my father had no questions asked. He would always help us out. So
The suburban.
Yeah, the suburban. That's right.
Did they ever share opinions of the music itself?
Hated it.
I mean, I'm sure they didn't. It's not what they were into. I'm sure
Not their cup of tea.
But I mean, to be fair, my mother likes power metal, so who knows? Maybe. I mean,
My mom hated it because she had to hear it every single day, like
every Sunday.
Yeah.
I never shared any piece of that music with my family because it's just why bother? So
Yeah, I don't think I ever did. I mean, my mom knew that I was in a band, but to the people on the outside who weren't in the scene, you being in the band is you're basically either you're in Metallica or you're not in a band. It doesn't even matter, right? You say you're in a band, they expect that you've got a big tour bus and you're gone for 3 days and they think you're coming back with a whole bunch of money. So, no one really understood it, and trying to explain to your mom, yeah, you're in a hardcore band. So what does that mean?
Right.
Like, what are you doing? What does that mean that
Hardcore
you're doing?
what?
Like, yeah, exactly. Hardcore. What is that? What is that?
Yeah,
Like, are you doing something bad?
We made enough money to get to the next city.
Yeah.
It's like the goal.
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you have any siblings that came out to the shows or had any thoughts on the music too?
My brother had a period where my younger brother had a period where he came out, he would come and hang out every now and then, but he was never into the music. But he would it was one of those situations where he was friends with everybody, so he would just come and hang out. Like he would come and honestly, for a period, he would come and break dance, and that's just what he did.
How's Al?
Yeah.
He's good. He's good. He got married last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chip's sister would go. B would go to shows
Yeah, my
with her
sister would go
friends.
too, yeah.
Eventually, they like when she got older, she would come to shows and stuff like that. But I never had any one of my family who went to a show. They didn't even know what it was. They're like, "Well, what are you doing?" And when they heard it, was like, "Why are you screaming? I don't understand what you're saying. So what are we supposed to do with that?" It's like, I don't know. It's just a thing I do, I guess. I don't know.
Julio's brother would show up every once in a while.
He would always want to make music with us. He's like, can we just do something? Can we jam? Because his brother was a like kind of local sort of underground hip hop artist at the time that just making kind of beats on Fruity Loops and things like that. So he always wanted Julio to play drums or kind of do something like musically, so that was always his thing. So he kind of lived vicariously through Julio at the same time.
I know you mentioned Chip's sister had come to some of the shows. What do you remember about girls being in the pit when Destro was playing? Because the
At that time, non-existent.
No, yeah.
No,
It's non-existent.
Mia.
I mean,
Mia was there.
little Mia,
at the Club Q shows.
Mia, Steph.
Yeah.
Shit.
There was that one.
They were the only two that would get down with everybody.
There was that one really skinny girl whose name I don't remember.
Yeah.
Marshall.
Marshall.
Yeah.
There was, I mean, I was making a joke, but I mean, now you see it much more.
Yeah, a lot.
And a lot more women involved in the music scene in general. But back then, you didn't really see it so much as far as the dancing went.
Yeah. It wasn't really the style of music that was the cup of tea for ladies
our style
at the time.
There was no clean singing.
There was no clean singing. They were more pro Glass Eater than they were Destro at that time. Just because that sound sort of appealed to them a little bit.
They were
more,
pro crooners.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned Club Q. That's where I saw you guys play the most. At some point, I'm like, is Destro the house band for Club Q? Because you guys were playing there all the time. I felt maybe that's just
before.
Maybe that's just my recollection, but I felt like at least once a week or more, I would see you guys on a flyer for Club Q. So I know you mentioned Amy Fiddler could have been booking some of those, but who else was bringing you guys in to play Club Q so frequently?
John
Wiley.
John Wiley.
He was the main guy that booked them.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have Alex Kenny on occasion, like we were mentioned earlier, but it was, I would say 9 out of 10 times it was John.
Yeah.
We took a lot of shows that in retrospect we shouldn't have, but again, at least for me, there was always we're still trying to kind of build a base of support, so it was always good, to kind of play with different bands. But we had this thing called the Bum Squad that me, Julio, and a friend of ours, Rodrigo, were on. So we kind of used the shows as a way to kind of see bands for free. So if we agreed to play the show, and we'd get into the show for free, so then we'd get to see the bands that we wanted to see. So we played a lot of shows because number one, we wanted to see the bands that we were playing with for free, but also more seriously, it's just to play with different people. Booking a tour at that time was always really difficult. So, obviously you play with a band, you become friends with the band and exchange information that way. When you went up to their city, you'd be able to book a show. So it made booking tours a little bit easier because, we didn't have a booking agent or anything like that. So it was predominantly Roy, and towards the tail end, Roy and I kind of putting shows together for a tour. So, it was useful in the end, but yeah. We did get burned out for a while and stopped playing for a bit because we were there like a lot.
And I was going to say, I'm glad that you brought that up about like going to the show, meeting another band and exchanging information, making friendly with them. We ended up doing that and playing with the August Prophecy, who their bass player was Keith Allen, who booked Hellfest.
The original
and
Hellfest.
Because of that, we ended up being able to play Hellfest 2000 and 2001 because we became good friends with them. And especially, I mean, Keith we were friendly with, but their singer Doug we became really good, close friends with. And they got us on the fest because of that. And I mean, we got to play not just to play with like, pretty much the who's who of that era, but just to be able to play to all these different people that would never have had a chance to see us,
Yeah.
What Destro was really good at, it wasn't really kissing ass, but it was just like earning.
We were hustlers, dude.
No, or like becoming friends with people. Like we really did become friends with people in bands who we respected. And then because of them, we would always get offers to go play places. So a lot of our touring was basically based on someone being like, hey, I have a show in enter random city here. These bands are going to play. Do you want to come up and play it? Yes. And then we book a tour around like a specific, we book like a weekend around a specific show. So that happened a bunch with Brothers Keeper.
Yep.
Where like, hey, we're going to do 4 dates in these specific cities. Do you guys want to come open for us? Yes. So we drove up to like, we would literally take a 24-hour drive from Miami, Florida to Erie or Syracuse or
Boston or something.
And literally go play, to like base our one day there and then build like a weekend around those shows.
Right.
That's how Destro did a lot of our touring.
Kind of how he functioned.
Yeah. So because of that, being friends with bands was important, but more importantly, we also had the reason we played so many local shows was because we needed to fund that somehow. And the way we would do that is by playing as many local shows as possible to take the extra $45-50 we would make to be able to like rent a trailer or make shirts or, whatever for gas.
Besides a festival, what do you think was one of the best turnouts as far as crowds?
We would
Go in Erie.
Well, I was going to say we happened to play at the Chili Pepper, which was in Coconut Grove, which is a community right here in Miami. And for some reason, the nu metal crowd down here, we were friends with a nu metal band called Idle Minds, and they booked a show. They were kind of a big deal down here, and they booked a show at the Chili Pepper, which was a primarily nu metal crowd that would go to that venue. And they put us on a show, like 3rd build out of 5. And the kids just went crazy for us for some reason. So anytime we played there after that, we always had a good turnout.
Yeah.
That and Cafe Cristal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, even though it wasn't new metal, right? The band was heavy. You guys had guitars, fast drums, screamy vocals. So I can see a crowd who may go to a Darwin's Waiting Room show or a show.
That's the crowd.
Would totally enjoy you guys too, because it was loud, it was heavy, it was fast, it was in your face, and you could get into the pit and push around and all that, and it all made sense.
It was just something different than what they were used to.
Sure.
There were 2 scenes coexisting at the same time, which was really awesome, and then we just kind of entered theirs.
Right.
And the first time we played, I think I smashed Kenn in the face with my bass by accident.
That's what I was bringing up earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they loved that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he brought his bass up and clocked him right below the eye.
Remember that?
Yeah, and my piece of my face was hanging off, and I didn't notice it. And I remember just kind of stepping off the stage and saying thanks to a bunch of people, and then some girl coming up to me was like, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." "Why?" Because your face is hanging off. What are you talking about? And a chunk of my face underneath was gone. I was like, might want to get this looked at.
Oops.
Oh, there's a piece of my face hanging on Roy's bass. Well done. Okay.
But I do say, I think playing like Hellfest in 2000, 2001 was probably that was probably the biggest thing we ever did as far as like a big show.
Sure.
Brother.
Yeah, I mean, locally, that fest that Kenn put on, that Where I Fell, was for a local fest or whatever. I mean, for a local show, that was a lot of friggin' people.
Like the shows that I remember being huge that weren't like fests were the final Brothers Keeper show, which was Converge, Martyr AD.
Oh, there was a record release show.
Yeah, that was insane.
No, that was their last show in Erie. That with Converge and Martyr AD, and then they had one other band. We also did their record release show like a month and a half prior, but the second one was their final show, like their last show, if I remember correctly. Might be wrong. And then the last show that we booked at Cafe Cristal.
Our last show, yeah.
Well, huge.
Did you guys have a record release party for the EP?
I'm sure.
The EP, I feel like we did. I don't think we did one for the full length though, because the full length we didn't get until we got to Hellfest. Remember, we got it like on a
Yeah, we
spool.
got it.
Didn't
Yeah,
actually,
we got it shipped to us.
yeah, we didn't actually have like cases for it. We actually just had it like the discs on like on a spool, and we just kind of made covers there.
So janky.
So
Now-
I would say yes for the EP. For the full length, no.
Now, the band's logo, if you even had one, I wasn't sure if that was like the official logo, what was on the EP, but the name, the way it was written, changed when the full length came out. Did you guys ever have like an official way that the band's name was written, or was it just based on whatever was coming out? It could change. It was flexible in that sense.
No, we never really did.
We never set up-
Again, yeah, there was never really any sort of like long-term branding idea, right? Because we were always kind of going to these different sources to help with regards to graphics. Ian Rowan did a lot of our shirts. Jason Caedo from Glass Eater, he worked on the artwork for the full length, right? So it was just a session of like, what do you guys think about this? How about this? And I'll change this and we'll put this here and that'll be cool kind of a deal. But there was never like a long-term idea of like, this has to be the brand and we're going to use this for this or that. We never, at least for me, that was never under any sort of consideration. It was like, we need to make a thing, and does this thing look cool? Yeah, it looks cool. Okay, well, let's just use that.
In hindsight, that probably would have been a good idea.
No,
In hindsight,
25
yes.
years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah, sure.
Well, you released the CD, right? The Accuracy of Broken Whispers, which was the full-length recording, and you went back to Jeremy Staska. So what were you looking for this time with Jeremy? Was there a different idea in mind, or was it basically let's do the same formula as we did for the EP?
It was familiarity. Like we knew Jeremy. Jeremy knew us. He knew our sound. We understood how Jeremy worked. And we were, I guess, a lot of people at that time, again, bands were going to Jeremy. He was just kind of the go-to guy, right? And if it wasn't broke, why fix it? So again, it was at least, for me, it was familiarity. Like we knew what we were going to do with Jeremy, knew where we wanted to go. Like why mess with it if it wasn't broken?
Yeah, he spends a lot of time. He spends a lot more time with drums. So the drum part, I think, was a lot faster this time. Like he kind of like breezed through it. And I remember one time while we were recording, I forget what the name of the song is, but he called it Camptown Races, and it wasn't called that. Because it started off like that,
Oh, I know the song you're talking about. I know the short one. The short one.
play that one.
It's on every, if you ever had the little Fisher Price record player as a child, Camptown Races was one of the records in there. So
I think we also just didn't have a lot of options. I mean, there weren't a lot of options in terms of recording down here at that time. Now, you can, everybody records you in their bedroom now and gets great quality. But at that time, we didn't really have a lot of choices. But again, like Ken was saying, the familiarity, and we knew Jeremy knew us.
Sure. Yeah, he kind of already had an ear for our sound, so like I think it was easy for him the second time around.
Sure, right. If there was the option to go to work with Kurt Ballou in God City or something like that, sure, he would have taken it, but it wasn't a thing that was on the table, right? It was always, well, let's go to someone, who knows our stuff. And again, we weren't working with a massive budget, right? It was like, well, we got to get something done, and this is the amount of money that we have to get it done. So where's the most efficient way to do it?
I think our budget was like $2,000, I think, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I'd be surprised if it was $2,000.
Fair enough.
There was also a cover on the full length.
Oh yeah,
Suzanne from.
Yeah.
Which Suzanne is. Even if you're a Weezer fan, you may not be as familiar with that song because it wasn't on any of their actual albums. But it is one of their better songs that the fans love. And how did you all decide on doing a cover of Suzanne from Weezer and putting it on the album?
That was Roy's call. which
Well,
is brilliant.
No, are we
no,
gonna poop on someone else now?
No, there's a
Yeah.
story behind
Yes,
that.
we are. Yes, we
Yes,
are.
yeah. So
No, wasn't that Roy's idea to cover Suzanne?
yeah, there was a cover. There was
But there's a story behind that though.
No, right.
a cover album that was coming out that someone was like, "Hey, can you record a song for it?" And we're like, "Sure." I'm gonna keep that man's name anonymous, so I'm not crapping on this person because it's been 20 years. I don't really know if he's gonna listen to this. So he's like, "Hey, can you record this song for us?" So for us, I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever, we'll do that." So he didn't really give us a song to cover. He's just like, "Pick your favorite Weezer song." So we did. We picked a song that we really liked. We really liked Suzanne, and we were like, "That would be a song that will be unique enough to that people that we can make work." Ariel basically worked out an arrangement that fit the song, and then we recorded it. And then at that point we were bound. Then because we didn't record it on our dime because we didn't have any money. So because of that, we ended up having to include it on the record. That bounced us from the LP. But
Is that the tribute album that Glass Eater and Further Seems Forever is on?
That is correct.
that is correct.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so that
And then you
that
can figure it out
song
from
was
there.
potentially going to be on that compilation, but then it wound up not being, and I think Midtown wound up doing Suzanne
Did they?
Probably.
for that compilation. I don't know if they had recorded
Okay.
it before or what, but I know the compilation included their version of that song, so it just never happened. So you had that song, it could have been on that compilation, but then it wound up just going on the full-length record, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ariel, because you were in Glass Eater, what were your thoughts on it at that time from what you can remember, considering Glass Eater's song had made that record, but your other band, Destro's, did not?
I thought it was fucking lame. So, yeah, that's that. So, I mean, we all know who we're talking about. I mean, we're not going to say his name, but it was just fucking stupid. It was like, why would you do that? Like,
I mean, of all the bands on that comp,
and then you get somebody
being
else
the
like,
least known. That's gonna
you
be
get somebody else to like cover the same song, the song that we thought of, that we had an idea. We were like, we're gonna do this one because nobody else is gonna think of it. And then you get them to do it, and that's like a fucking, I slapped them up to the balls. It's like, fuck that. So, not cool.
I like how it came out though. That our cover,
I did.
I liked. It was completely
I'm
different.
glad we put it out on our full length, and we weren't associated with that tribute.
Right.
So, in a way, it's like bittersweet, but I think it's cool that we did it on our own. So.
Mhm.
It sucks because
yeah.
I don't know how well that album did, or like if people know about it, or if it like got other bands popular. But I mean, it would have been cool to be on it. Maybe it would have like projected us a little bit further, but I don't know. So,
And with the full-length album, that again came out on Ides of March. So was that just because of that relationship with Matt and him wanting to continue to put out the music that you guys were recording?
Yeah, we were obligated, for lack of a better term, to put the record out with Matt. We didn't have any sort of like written agreement, but we told him we would do it, and we wanted to honor the promise that that we had made to him. And so that's why we put it out on Ides of March, kind of understanding that we would have hoped that there would have been subsequent maybe tours and support with childhood and things of that nature. So we were just honoring our obligation to our friend Matt.
Did you guys go out on more tours when that record came out?
Sure.
Yes.
yeah, we did. Yeah, we poured
We
more.
seriously had a list of so we would sell the record off of like a CD case. We had to buy CD cases for ourselves, put the CD in there because the covers didn't come out on time. So we would literally tour with this record and these CD cases that we didn't have a full copy of. And then we had to mail out copies of the covers eventually to the people that we met on tour. It seemed to be not cost prohibitive at the end of the day for us.
That seemed to happen a lot to a lot of bands
It-
around that time. I don't know why.
Did you make the same amount of CDs for the full length as you did for the EP, or were there more or less?
I feel like Matt pressed like 1,000 of them.
Yeah, I think
maybe,
Matt
when
had
this
pressed
was there.
1,000 or maybe, and I think it eventually went to a repress maybe after the initial 1,000 or so, because I remember later on us getting more because we had been selling them pretty well, on tour. And I think, pre-Hellfest, we needed a bit more. Because again, we'd been friends with a lot of some of the bigger bands and they were gracious enough to kind of take us out with them. So, we ended up selling a lot of CDs when we were out. So we were always pressing Matt to kind of get more. And he came through in that regard. So I
Did
love
you
you, Matt.
did you find that as you were doing more touring with the new record, that there was a lot of interest at the shows, people coming up to the merch table wanting to buy the CD? Was that the general theme?
Yeah, I mean, Destro was an interesting was an interesting thing, right? We weren't. I mean, we were an interesting group, just with our demographics, just in general. I mean, it didn't it didn't miss anyone that there was a black man screaming his head off in a hardcore band. That wasn't something that you really saw at that time, right? There was maybe Adam Jackson from 12 Tribes and maybe a couple other places, but you didn't really see that. So there was kind of the niche aspect of seeing this band, and then just, oh, by chance this band's actually pretty good. So once people saw us play live, um, they were into us, and it didn't hurt that we were not weird assholes. We were good guys, good people. We joked around with people, and at least for me, I always treated the people who came to see us like I would want to be treated myself, right? There was no like hierarchy of like I'm in the band and you're not, so there was never any of that. So I think people just generally enjoyed the vibe, right? So it's like, oh, well, these are good guys and they play good music. So, we enjoyed it. So it translated to, us getting on tours and playing bigger shows and selling more CDs. And, we didn't have shirts and we had to get shirts. And it was like, we had to do a real band stuff.
Right.
We need more shirts. We need more stuff to give to people because they want it, and that was a good problem to have, but it was always a problem we always had.
Yeah, we were. I always thought that we always did relatively well. Like when people gave us a shot, we always did our best to like pay it off. And we were selling merch, we were doing things. We had like an EP lined up before the band broke up that was like eventually going to come out through EMS's label. What was the name of the label, Chip?
Surprise Attack.
Surprise that. Yeah.
So that was these were things that were planned, but sadly didn't pan out at the end of the day because we eventually broke up. But we were very, very lucky, and we have to shout out Poison the Well because they were so instrumental on keeping us relevant for a long time. So like they drove from they went on tour, came back home, were home for like 3 days, and then drove to Brick, New Jersey to play a show just because we were on it. And they're like, yeah, we'll drive up and play a show. We'll play a show. You guys want us to drive up and play that show with you guys? Yeah, that'd be awesome. While we were on tour, like they weren't on tour, we were on tour. They just like showed up, made the show 3 times the size that we could have ever, 3 times the size of my ass, 10 times the size of what we could have made it, and got eyes on us that we wouldn't have gotten. And that definitely 100% propelled our sales. We were very, very lucky to have like, the guys and Brothers Keepers, EMS, Keith and Hell, Doug, Poison Well, Matt Fox,
New Jersey kids.
The New Jersey kids, all like that, CM kids from New Jersey. Like they were just it was just very, very lucky. We were just very lucky at the time to have people who were really supporting us. John 25 in Rochester.
We had a good support system.
Yeah, we had people who really wanted to help the band as much as possible, and because of that, we were able to do like great things, or good things. Great, maybe good things. Great things maybe might be a little too much, but good. But we were very we were very lucky. We were lucky to have great friends. Vadim, and this day forward.
This day forward, yeah.
Like it was just a bunch of people who were just like great, like literally like who we consider friends to this day, because I still talk to most of those people on a regular basis. I wish I could still talk to John 25. Reach out to me if you ever listen to this.
Shout out to John 25, man. Talk to that guy.
Seven angels, seven plagues.
Seven angels, seven plagues. Like there was just, there was a good group of people who were constantly like really, really supportive of us.
And that's important. And everyone that you had the chance to connect with along the way, there were a lot of people that I imagine played a very important role in the journey of Destro. You mentioned the EP that didn't come out.
Mm-hmm.
Did it have a title?
No, we never got that far.
No, we had like 4 or 5 songs that I still have on a tape somewhere that we had basically worked out. But we were getting ready to, I think we needed to write one. I think we were like, let's write one more song.
Yeah, I think the plan was 5 songs, I think is what we were planning on doing, right?
Yeah. And then we needed like one more song, and then we were going to go into record, but then that just didn't pan out.
When you say it didn't pan out, what may have happened to derail that?
Destro broke up.
Well, I mean,
I don't even know what happened.
Roy's being nice. The rise of Glass Eater was a large contributing factor to Destro not continuing on. The reason being is that for me personally, there was always the opportunity to play music with other people, but I didn't want to do that. So if I couldn't play in Destro with the 5 guys that were in the band, I just didn't want to do it at all. So there was always going to be, Glass Eater's ascension, hats off to them. There was never any like animosity towards it, but, they were moving well and they deserved to be doing the things that they were doing, and say they wanted to continue. It was always going to be very difficult to do both bands successfully at the same time. And when it became apparent that Destro was going to be kind of the kid brother of it, I was more keen on just kind of stepping away and letting, kind of Glass Eater do their thing. And just maybe that was just, Destro's time had come and gone. And that was completely fine. I was, okay with that. I didn't want to play music with any other people. Right. And it might have been fine, I guess. I don't know. But at least to me, like, these were my friends. I was playing in a band with my friends. I didn't want to play in a band with other people, like musicians. I just kind of wanted to do this thing with my friends. And so if it couldn't be with my friends, it was, for me at least, it wasn't going to be anyone else, I
do have one hilarious thing to say about this, that we had gone on tour with a bunch of other people filling in on guitar.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Got every single one of those things, either outside of the kid from Fort Myers or Sarasota, what was his name? Todd. Outside of Todd, I think everyone else who filled in for us, at some point, Kenn wanted to strangle. Like, Kenn hated him so much. So it became
Did they just rub him the wrong way? Like, did they do something?
Yes, they would definitely. Kenn is Kenn's a special guy who would sit in the back of the van quietly, just wanting to be kept keeping to himself. And if anyone bothered him, he would be annoyed. He would be annoyed for days. This was and that anytime someone would ruffle his feathers, it became a situation where Kenn was just like, you know what? I am going to go step away from this for 5 minutes, and Roy, come with me. Okay.
Yeah. And I again, for me, again, it was always, just kind of doing this fun thing with my friends. So it was, having someone come in for a short period of time, it always kind of felt weird. There was a period where you had to get to know them, and, they didn't play like Ariel, or they didn't know to do this thing like Ariel did, or they weren't, this animated like Ariel, or if Chip was, I was like, that's not really what Chip would do, kind of a deal. So it was this kind of, like I had my circle, and I was just ornery about some other person doing a thing, and that's what it didn't. The band didn't, I guess, kind of didn't feel whole, right? Because it's like, oh, you would always get the question of, well, he's not in the band. What is he doing? Oh, well, Ariel's this or that or the other. And I don't know. I just got annoyed with those questions. I wanted the unit to continue as the unit. And so when we had another guy fill in, and it was always disastrous, right? Because the four of us had our tendencies and we had our inside jokes, and then there was one guy who just didn't. Right? He just didn't laugh at the thing, or they didn't say the thing that you were supposed to say. And so I'm sure as an outsider, they're like, they didn't feel very welcome. So it was like, why are we doing this thing?
Did I miss one tour or two tours?
One
tour.
One.
You missed one and I missed one.
Yeah.
Which one did you miss?
I missed the one where you guys went with Brothers Keeper up to West
Brothers
Virginia
Keeper, yeah.
because it was my cousin's wedding.
Yeah.
And who filled in?
No, you guys went as a 4-piece.
We went as a 4-piece.
Oh, okay. So the one that I didn't go on, y'all had two different guitar players.
Three.
We had three. We had
Who did
Todd.
we had Todd.
We had Dom.
Yeah,
Oh,
John.
that's right.
And then Brian filled in at the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Right on.
So real quickly before we move on, I had two items because you were bringing up about being in the back of the van. I want you guys to know that I'm in the process of teaching my kids back of the van rules for Uno. Just so you're aware.
Say that.
Just so you're aware of that. And I don't want this episode to end without talking about the metal dance, because I talked to somebody about this recently, trying to explain this to them through text, and it just didn't come across the right way. So Jeff, so we had this thing where we were listening to Dillinger Escape Plan Under the Running Board.
Yeah. And
if anybody in the band fell asleep, we would put on.
We would play 43% density.
No. It was Mullet Burden. The Mullet Burden.
Mullet Burden. Mullet Burden. Yeah.
And if you've ever seen the Dillinger Escape Plan play live, they're basically they're going crazy. They're throwing themselves all over the place. If you fell asleep in the van, if you fell asleep on a couch, if you fell asleep at somebody's house, we would turn the Mullet Burden on and we pretended we were in Dillinger Escape Plan. And basically fell all over that person. Needless to say, we didn't sleep much on tour, and we did get to a point where if we were staying at people's houses, we were sleeping under dining room tables.
Yeah.
We were sleeping in places where you just couldn't get to. And I thought about it the other day. I just had to bring it up. I thought it was the funniest thing thinking about it.
Yeah.
As a person that probably got that the most,
yeah.
I can tell you that it is a very interesting experience to have seven, because it's usually like, the four guys in the band plus Rodrigo, who was our fifth member, who was always around. Then like two other of our friends, whoever happened to be there, jumping on you at the same time while you're sleeping on a couch. It's a very interesting thing to be woken up to. With just like do, 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 do. And immediately I'm like at some point it was like you start hearing those noises and you're like rolling off the couch like I'm awake. Yeah.
And just speaking about some of the places that you would have to crash at on these various tours.
Oh God.
Do any stand out to you that were just very uncomfortable?
Honestly, we didn't really do a lot of that because our routing that we would always end up doing were like, okay, we played the show, guys. We got to go drive to the next show. And we would usually sleep in the van. We would just do we would drive. It's like, okay, cool. We'd leave Miami on Thursday night. We drive to New Jersey. We play New Jersey. We drive to Boston. Then we drive to Syracuse. Then we drive home.
I think we stayed with Rich at one time in Jersey at his place.
Right. That was the first time we met them. Yeah, after the church show with Boys in the Well.
Yeah.
So we didn't really do a lot of that, honestly.
Yeah.
We did so much driving that we didn't really have a lot of that.
In Kentucky, one time we stayed at some random place that was like literally in the middle of a field. Like someone owned the property, but they just had like a trailer park or just a random like a random standing building that was there, and we went and stayed there in Kentucky. And then the only other place that I remember that was like super weird and awkward was 100% when we went in Syracuse and drove all to the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Stayed at that girl's house. I don't remember what her
name.
Oh,
at Erica's?
The trailer park, yeah.
Yeah. Ken invited me to my own death by
I wasn't gonna die alone if I was gonna die. So
yeah. Ken's like, hey, you want to come with me to this? And like immediately as I'm walking in complete darkness to like go to this to go to where we're walking, I turn to Ken and I'm like, I just want to know if we die, I blame you 100% for this because I should be here, and I want you to make sure that you're aware of that. It was
I wasn't aware of the story until Roy recently came to visit me and he told it to me, and I was like, what?
It was a
scary time.
It was
scary time.
Yeah, it was very dark in the mountains of Syracuse that no one really realizes how dark it actually is there with no external lights. And we're like, and I'm like, Ken, why did you invite me to this?
I didn't want to die alone. I mean, we were, 5, urban city boys from Miami in upstate New York in a trailer park in Syracuse or, somewhere outside of Syracuse. And it was very dark. And it was definitely like the Hills Have Eyes vibe going on. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go out there alone. So who am I going to grab with me?
Holocaust shit going down.
We're fucked.
Yeah.
We're gonna die for sure.
And because you guys were spending so many hours together, I mean, we can quickly tell the story of driving from Miami to Jersey, but that's many hours, right? Being in the car.
Yeah.
So when you guys are in the van, you're going to all these towns, going through some of the smaller towns, making stops along the way. Do you have any favorite memories of places you got a chance to stop at? And were there any situations where you had car trouble or you ran into some people that were a little sketchy? Like anything like that ever happened?
I don't remember. I don't remember us ever having any car trouble. Did you?
Yeah, we had one. We had like a tire blew up on the way to Winston-Salem, but that was like
So we were driving up to Hellfest 2001. And we had stopped in Coral Springs to pick up some friends of ours, threw them in the van. We're driving up 95. We get up somewhere into Central Florida. I don't recall where. We stop. We get off to go use the restroom. And there's a one sign that says, whatever, gas or whatever this way. So we drive about 1.5 miles down the road to stop to use the restroom. We pull up to this bar and we get out of the van. And there is a lit neon sign that says no colors. And we said, oh my God, get back to the van. We got back in the van and left.
What year again was this?
This was 2001-ish. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was really weird. We like pulled off the highway and we pulled into the thing that's no colors. And I was like, yeah. The weird thing about it was if you traveled, a mile in the opposite direction, right? There was McDonald's and Wendy's and all these other things, but it was like the highway divided like this sort of like urban central North Florida from like this kind of like backwoods. And I was like, oh, this is interesting, to say the least.
I think a lot of times some people, not everyone, but some people can sometimes forget that Florida is still the South.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, we were definitely made aware of that very quickly.
Wow, like crazy story that is.
Yeah, but I don't recall other than that. I mean, we had one time where we kept the keys locked in the van in Winston at that day-long fest in Winston-Salem.
Oh yeah.
Oh, was that the Dirt Fest one?
No. It was,
no, that Julio lost the keys, and we weren't aware that he had locked them inside the van. And I'm like, Chip, where's the spare key? And he's like, oh, I don't know what happened to it. I gave it to Julio, and I'm like, and then I yelled at Chip for 2 straight days about how Julio's an idiot. He needs to know that. And
you're like, Julio's a child.
Julio's a child. He's grown up. I love Julio. Don't get me wrong. Julio's not an idiot. But it was like you have to get the keys back from Julio. And it was just me being mad because it was my van.
I felt bad because it was his personal van that we were driving.
We were using, and I'm like, we can't lose these things, Chip. And Chip's like, but why are you not yelling at Julio? Julio's a child. That's why I say I was like the band dad.
Yeah.
Did you guys take turns driving, or was it one person's?
So Okay, so
No.
here's how that worked out. Okay. So Ken did not have a driver's license. Julio did not have a driver's license. Ariel was not allowed to drive because the first time we went out, he almost fell asleep. So it basically came down to me and Roy, and then our friend Rodrigo, who would come on tour with us. Those are the only people who drove, and it was awful.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it was Ariel 100% did that shit on purpose. He didn't almost fall asleep. What he did is that he would just constantly
It was veering into the other lane
veering
Yeah.
into the lane.
Yeah.
with the trailer. Yeah.
100%. I believe Ariel did that shit on purpose. I don't.
Ariel, is this from your recollection? Are these true stories?
Dude, I got so comfortable. No, I would fall asleep. It was that bad.
Wow.
It was like in the afternoon, brother. It was.
It was in the afternoon
Yeah.
because I was
It was in-
definitely riding shotgun
Dude,
in a 5-lane highway, and you
be
kept
awake.
veering.
I could be awake in any seat except for the captain, the driver's seat or the captain's chair. Like, even if I sat with shotgun, I would still fall asleep. I don't know what it is about the front that just makes me sleepy, but I will stay awake in the back. I don't know why. I'm sorry.
He did that shit on purpose.
So when you finally made it to a gig and you're getting a chance to play, any memories of on stage antics or somebody forgetting their parts, anything like that ever happen?
Yeah.
We all sounded good all the time.
Yeah, I don't remember anything like that.
That's
Yeah.
like I fell.
Oh yeah, that.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Roy fell. That's the third person that's had an accident in Destro.
What happened?
Fell
Roy?
over.
Here you go, Posse Numbers Fest. I have the shirt from the show because when I ran out, I wanted to cut it. I go, oh yeah, it's a medium that never fit me. So I just remember like the stage was like had for some reason like a dip for some reason, and I
They're
like
pallets, right? I mean,
yeah,
Yeah, there were pallets on. Yeah, some reason.
So I go back because I
for some reason.
the cable had gotten caught on something. So I go back and I plug it in. And then when I turn around to step, I didn't realize that it was the uneven part. I just crashed and broke basically broke the cable. And then played the rest of the time standing next to the amp with like a smaller cable I had, being like, "Hey, what's up, guys? Just standing here." But Ken was dying laughing because there was a history of me falling for like 2 years, where everywhere I went, I would fall. I earned the nickname Dragon from the Rough Riders rapper.
Yeah.
That was a fun time. There was also an accident that happened in New Jersey where something.
I feel bad about that. I'm just
For me,
saying.
About which one?
The New Jersey one where he stepped in the hole.
Yeah, I stepped
Oh,
in
he
the
stepped in the hole. The story. He stepped in the
gopher hole,
gopher hole.
and me and
It
Chip
was dark.
are gonna go to a friend's house to pick something up because he's giving us like food or something that we can take with us. So me and Chip are walking. I step in a gopher hole, sprain my ankle, fall straight to the ground. Instead of checking if I'm all right, runs back to the van being like, guys, wake up. Roy just fell.
A terrible person. I told you I feel bad about that. And I said I feel bad about it.
And I'm like, I'm okay, I guess. Everybody guys. Yeah. But like
I think we were at Paul Callie's house.
Yeah, I think it was Paul Callie's house.
Paul Callie's house.
We all still
Oh,
love
God.
each other very much.
Yeah, there was, what show was it? Was it the last show or the show before the last show that I fell off the stage at Churchill's? Like I slipped off the stage.
God, I don't remember that.
I don't
Well,
remember that.
it's on video because it's on YouTube.
I need to
I'd
see
seen it
that.
and I was like, oh wait, I fell off. I don't remember it happening, but I don't know how it was. I don't know how it came about, but I guess I forgot that there was a little bit of a dip like Roy in the stage at Churchill's, and I kind of like stepped off and like I
Oh,
fell
okay.
off of the stage.
Oh shit.
But there's video evidence of that, so don't feel badly, Roy.
There's video
You
of
know.
me falling. Ariel has it. He just hasn't put it on the internet, thank God.
Well, it's already on YouTube.
And that is something, though, when Destro was really happening, people did have camcorders they'd occasionally bring to shows, but unless there were someone like that, a lot of these things weren't being recorded, so they're not really out there. But
Right.
there are some more recent things, like you guys did what, one or two reunions when the after the band had broken up. Does that sound about right?
We just did one.
Yeah,
Did we do
I think
one
there
or
was.
two?
I feel like there were.
We
I
did
feel like there was one reunion, and then was there a show that Poison the Well was doing, and we
No.
played that show?
No, we did. Well, then
No, it was Gainesville Fest you're thinking of.
No,
We
no,
did
the
two.
show at Churchill's that they did.
No, we did two. We did a reunion show that was us and I want to say Kids Like Us that we were
Okay.
on that bill. But then we also did a show. We also reunited one time when Joe passed away. We did,
okay.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
and that's also online.
That was at the Alley, right?
Yes.
Right.
Talk about
So
that
that's
show,
free.
because that video that is on YouTube, there appeared to be something going on that show. I don't know if it was a fight or something to that effect, but it looked like it caused a really big disruption where you had to stop playing. Do you remember that experience?
Uh, was the was it the one where I stopped and I told people like there was I think somebody was fighting or something like that in the crowd,
Yeah.
right? And I was just like, well, we're not here for that. Again, I was not a big proponent of like beating people up or fighting or whatever. There was a lot of times where there were shows where there may have been, like Ariel mentioned before, like the melding of worlds, like the new metal kids who had kind of been interested in Destro would come to the more hardcore centric shows, and they kind of get picked on by the skinheads or the tough guys or whatever. And I was not about that at all. I kind of learned that from like Brothers Keeper. Mike Ski was really big on everybody kind of like getting along and like no fighting and stopping, and we're not going to play until this is all resolved. So I think that's what would have happened. Like I was just like, no, we're not going to do this. Like, this is not what we're here for.
It was also a memorial for Joe.
Yeah.
So it was mad insulting to decide that you're going to start a fight at this
Right.
thing that's for a friend of ours who had passed away.
Yeah.
Right. And for those that don't know, Joe was in All Hell Breaks Loose with you, Chip, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
We
we
had gone up.
for a
What's
period
that?
of
Sorry.
time.
Talk about that for a moment, though. Why was it important for Destro to reunite for a tribute to him?
I don't remember. Like, I think it was more just like, what can we do to try and raise as much money as possible for this?
The family.
I mean, for his family, and I mean, we hadn't obviously. I mean, I think it was we did that in 2005, and so we had broken up for probably 3 years, but I mean, we were all still in contact, but I mean, I don't think we hadn't played in that amount of time. But it was definitely, as soon as we, it was mentioned, we're like, yeah, absolutely, we'll do it.
Yeah. Like, Joe, when I was in All Hell Breaks Loose for that short period of time, like me and Joe had grown very, very close. And, we would go to shows together. I drive him to shows every once in a while. Then sadly, like life took a toll, and I went back to school, and that didn't give me an opportunity to hang out with him as much as I once did. But when he passed away, that was, and again, I had to quit All Hell Breaks Loose because I was back in class, I was back in school. But when he passed away, that was so heartbreaking because Joe was just such a good kid and had so much life in him. And then when that happened, and the opportunity arose for us to play. Everyone was going to be in town. We're like, all right, let's do this because we had played with what was the name of his first band? The one with
Pointless. They had played with us a handful of times. Yeah.
So it was an opportunity to do that. So we just decided, let's go ahead and play this show. For Joe.
Right.
Sad.
There was another show, I want to say it was at Churchill's, where you guys reunited. Does that sound about right?
Mm-hmm. That was
Yeah. We did that one. That one was like, it was a weird thing. Like, I felt like I think John McHale booked that for us.
Yeah, he did.
And
that was for that fest, right? Or no?
No.
No. It was our own thing. It was our own thing. But I remember like it started late, and I don't think that we played until very late. If memory serves on that one, does that sound right to you guys?
Mm-hmm. Wasn't that the? Well, I want to say Poison the Well was on that. Am I wrong? I want to say Poison the Well was on that.
Maybe they were. I don't remember, man.
Or like it was a
No,
secret show that they were going to be doing that everybody knew about, but they couldn't be
Oh.
Poison the Well for some reason.
They might have played under a different name, maybe.
Maybe that's what it was.
when they released, they had their CD release show at that random show in, like, we had already decided we were calling it quits, and we had now, and like they offered us an ability to play at some show that they were doing for their release. They were releasing a record.
Oh, at Ovation.
Yeah, at Ovation.
Tear from the Red. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We put all our differences aside, but I don't think everyone knew that we were already on the outs. I think that was already like I don't think anybody knew that. We just decided to play it anyways. But I think at that time, it was an interesting time having conversations. But we were just like, but at that point, we were just like, okay, let's play this show because it's Poison the Well, and they asked us to do it, and we did that. But that was that we had already decided we were going to call it quits. I think Glass Eater had come back from tour. We were available to do it, so we went ahead and did it. But it wasn't like one of like the last shows or like the reunion shows per se.
I remember Mike Kime climbing up the monitors were like 12 feet, like on stage, and then like 12 feet up. He was up, like, climbing them and just jumping into the crowd during Poison the Well for this. I was just like, you're so high up, dude.
How did you guys change over the years as you're playing these reunion shows? Did you feel any different as you were on stage, or was it just picking up where you left off?
Picking up where we left off. I mean, it feels really good playing with these dudes, to be honest.
Yeah, it was always fun. I mean, it was especially like this was my first, which I mean, I think the same with these guys. I mean, it was my first real band, and it was always fun. It was just one of those situations where it didn't work at the time. We couldn't make it work, and but it was always fun. I mean, it was a great time doing it.
I mean, if we did it right now, we would just pick up where we left off.
Right. Like we were all like,
It would just be a bit more hobbled and more tired and a bunch of other things. But yeah, no, I mean, again,
I really want to practice. Really,
it's like, well, I gotta do this for the kids.
I gotta work tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
right.
One of those things. But yeah, it's always fun because it was always, at least for me, it was always fun. It was just doing the fun things with my friends, and it will always be that, right? And maybe part of the reason why it didn't kind of skyrocket as it should have is because we never looked at it, at least for me, I never looked at it like a business or a brand. It was just, these are the guys I do this fun thing with, and we just like to have fun, or I just like to have fun, right? And I didn't take it as seriously as some of the other bands of the era, right? Just kind of thinking of the longevity of it. I just thought it would go on forever because these are my friends and I just like playing with my friends.
Mm.
And if you guys were to put out something new, considering how much you've grown over the years, I imagine your interest musically have also grown as well. What do you think Destro would sound like now if you were to put out something new?
So fucking good. I can tell you right now, it would sound so fucking good. With the amount of like how technology has advanced. We can get it done like in a day if we wanted to. And it would just sound awesome. Because I know that with me and Chip, just throwing back ideas at each other and then Roy stepping in and with his little bass line and then, it would just be rad. It would be fucking sick.
I love it. I love Ariel's youthful enthusiasm. Again, I think it'd be a little bit. I think it'd be I think it'd be a bit more different than it was. I don't think it would be the same thing. I think like musically, we're probably all into very different things, and there'd be different spheres of influence that would kind of affect the music. I know Julio and I have always liked heavier, kind of slower, like more mid-tempo stuff. But Destro was just a thing that we did. It was always at least fun for me. So particularly, I'm always about the breakdowns, and I want it to be heavy, and I want it to be aggressive and angry, and maybe not so fast, but it can have a fast part in it. So I think we were writing stuff that was a bit more that was a bit slower, right? And I was gonna try and do some clean like singing stuff. That was something I kind of wanted to explore. And I'd probably be into doing something like that as well. I don't know that I could kind of scream that way anymore, 20 years after. But it would be the same, but a bit dissimilar, if that makes any sense.
It does. There's always the possibility of one more song.
Yeah, maybe.
You mentioned technology and it being so much more flexible now, where you can do that and not even be in the same room, and you can produce something like that.
I mean, it's doable. It's just a matter of, will we do it?
That's a good question. Yeah.
Me, Chip, and Ariel have always been kind of like, and Julio, honestly, have kind of hovered around each other, because even so, when All Hell Breaks Loose was starting, Chip's like, I need a bass player. Roy, you want to do this? Sure. Then when after Dance Floor Justice when they needed a bass player for Dance Floor Justice, when they're like, Roy, you want to come in and play bass? And I'm like, I have one condition. I'm in school, so I can only do it part-time. And then Chip's like, okay. And then he starts booking shows every single week. And I'm like, that is not in my wheelhouse. So I play an occasional show with them here and there. But like, we were always around, and we always like, shit. When they recorded that full length, I was there screaming at people to stop fucking around. It wasn't even my band. It's like, hey, stop being an idiot. Just doing that. Fucking
mentioned you were the dad though, right? So that's what dads do, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was just like, I just knew that everyone's on a budget. We're on a budget. Yeah. We have to spend this much money. We have this amount of money. This is costing everyone money. Please stop. Yeah, that was always me.
Well, just looking at the audience at the reunions that I had the chance to watch, you can see there's still passion, and people appreciate the music that you all brought to the scene back in that time. And it's great that you did at least leave the EP and the full length, as well as some great stuff on YouTube. So it's just been a pleasure getting a chance to have you all on today to tell the story of Destro. There was a lot that we got into, from the earliest beginnings to where we're leaving off with here. So as we get ready to close things out, I'd love to give each of you the last word. Any final thoughts you'd like to share to folks out there? We'll kick off with Chip, and then we'll work our way around. Take us home.
Nothing really. Just I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us. Again, the five of us, we still talk relatively, pretty regularly, but it's nice to be able to sit down and have a conversation like this, because this we don't get to do. I'm just really happy that I was able to have that time with these guys, because it really was, it opened the doors to a lot of things for me musically. And I'm glad that I was able to do it, especially with these guys.
Thank you, Chip. Let's go over to Ariel.
Jeff, thank you for this podcast, because without it, we wouldn't know like how crazy Florida actually is.
Yeah, Jeff, seriously, your podcast is fantastic, man.
I'm like, because I'm like, man, Florida was, I'm not like a proud Floridian. Like, I just say I'm from there. But now that I'm like hearing all these stories, I'm like, man, I come from a really cool state with a lot of crazy ass people. So yeah, and I don't know, man. It's like, this wasn't like, I don't know if I had like this mission in life to like be in a band with like people that were put in my life, at that time, and just kind of going for it, because I don't have a memory of like saying like, let's start this band, let's do this project. It just kind of, in my mind, it just happens, or it just happened. It's like I'm living like a, like a dream almost. But I don't know, man. Like, I appreciate all of you. Shout out to everybody. Shout out to Julio. Shout out to my wife. Shout out to my kid. Shout out to all y'all's kids. Fucking beautiful ass kids, man. Yeah, dude. It's just, I fucking love you guys.
Ariel, thank you. Let's go over to Ken.
Oh, I don't know. I'm always surprised that at this point that people even know that Destro was a thing, right? So, it's nice, that it is a thing. It's just kind of something strange, that I tell my son that I did a thing, and he looks it up and he sees his dad doing something that he thinks is cool. At this stage, and his friends think are very cool, and they want to do a band, and your dad was in a band and tell us all about it. So that's very cool. So it's nice, and thank you for doing this and kind of keeping the name there. I don't know. Just shout out to everyone that has been a part of like the Destro journey, from Matt Fox to, guys in like Poison the Well and Code 7 and Dave and those guys, people who gave us a place to stay and crash and stuff we broke at people's houses and those kind of things. And yeah, it's just been fun and playing in these like Ariel, I never set out to, I want to do a band or anything else like that. It was just kind of a thing that just happened organically, and I'm glad to have been a part of it. And it's always got a lot of good memories and my friends from college. Oh, shout out to my fantasy baseball team who are going to be listening to this. To Sanduco, shout out to them for caring. But yeah, it's a really special and fun part. Of my life. It's one of those things that you kind of cross off your bucket list. So I'm glad to have been a part of it. I don't think it would have been as fun if it had been with guys other than the four guys that I was able to do it with.
Well said. Thank you, Ken. And we will close out with Roy.
So, caveat, I refer to a lot of people as idiot. That doesn't mean that I actually think they're an idiot. I literally
It's a term of endearment.
Yeah, I literally refer to every single person who I've spoken to who is on this podcast, who is my friend for the last 25 years, as an idiot on a regular basis. That includes Ken. Vouch for me, Ken.
Well, I mean, I am an idiot, but that's neither here nor there.
Chip.
No argument here.
That's just the way I talk. I was very blessed to have this band and these people as in my life at a very important time in my life. And they have always been my support system for basically the last 30 years. Whether it be Ken, whether it be Chip, whether it be Ariel, Julio, even Rock and Bob for a good period of time, Rodrigo, who is like the unnamed sixth member of the band. We were just very, we were really, really good friends who spent literally every waking moment together for like 10 years. And like, whenever Ariel wasn't on tour or Julio wasn't on tour, we were hanging out, whether we were practicing, writing songs, or watching WrestleMania, or watching professional wrestling, or doing these things. These guys they're not members in a band to me. They're my family for the most part, especially now that I have although I have more recently recovered family, which is a whole other story for another day. But these are people who are my family, by choice, and that I love very much.
Well put.
We're seeing down here very much so, but the Destro was a great experience that will always live on with me. And I'm really glad those two CDs are out there, so we can revisit those songs with people. But I thank you for having us on, and I thank you for letting us share our dumb, goofy stories.